right, are we all set?
Yes, we can. I'm not saying they said it yesterday. No, they do need to energize they should have had wage data. The diesel versus the high-speed rail.
I call back into session the recessed meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. Would you all please stand, and I'd like to ask Board Member Deardan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are reconvening the meeting that was called to order of the California High-Speed Rail Authority yesterday. And yesterday we met for the purposes of having a staff presentation and hearing public comment on the final EIR-EIS. Therefore, today, without objection, I'd like to have the first order of business move to items 5, 6, and 7, which deal with that matter. And there have been, we will address the full public comments after we address these three items. 5 members of the public have expressed an interest in speaking on either items 5, 6, or 7, so I'd like those individuals to come forward when we get to item 6. So at this time, we'll address item 5, which is a summary and brief response to the comments received on the final program EIR. Mr. Van Ark, would you like to present that item further? Item 5.
Mr. Chairman, yes, item 5, the staff worked last night until about 11 o'clock looking at all comments that have been submitted to date, comments that had not yet been reported on or considered in the documentation that you received. Staff, with the Attorney General's support, put together a report. It has been put on the Internet this morning as well, and copies of this report are available to the public. Copies have been distributed of all the outcome of the findings and the additional information that was received. This report will be presented to the board today by Mr. Dan Levitt and Ms. Danae Asherson. So, Mr. Levitt, if you want to report to the board.
Chairman Pringle, members of the board. Actually, our CEO gave much of my testimony, so I'll be brief. We did hear oral comments from 19 commenters yesterday, many of which also provided written testimony. And over the last several days, we received a number of letters, emails, faxes, providing comment on the revised final program EIR, which is a copy of these is shown here, which I'll present to you shortly. As mentioned last night, we stayed late into the night reviewing all of the comments received, both written and oral, and developed written responses to the primary issues raised in the comments. These primary issues are concerns with the response to comments and overall document, ridership and revenue forecasting issues, comments regarding the high-speed train alternatives and the number of feasible alternatives studied, Union Pacific Railroad issue, Monterey Highway impacts, the SETEC alignment alternative, issues related to train splitting, other termini that people thought we should be looking at, and further revision and recirculation of the program EIR. This document, which you have before you, which we made available to the public, is a brief document with our responses. We have made a conclusion looking at these that we believe these issues were dealt with through the draft and revised final program EIR and the responses to comments, and we conclude that the input that we have received does not change the staff recommendation.
Very good. Any board members' questions on this item? Mr. Kopp.
I just want to compliment Mr. Levitt and the rest of the staff who prepared this document.
Mr. Kopp or Mr. Katz, could you activate your microphone?
I want to compliment Mr. Levitt and the rest of the staff who participate in the preparation of both the certified program EIR and the summary of it. And even though I just had time before the meeting to read about 2 pages of the response to the comments yesterday, all of that material is eminently readable and understanding, and that ought to be noted.
Very good. Ms. Schenk.
Well, I just want to echo Judge Kopp's comments. As I said privately yesterday, this is one of the first times that we've had this much material put into reasonably readable plain English. It was very understandable. My only continuing challenge is with the font size, because I can't find glasses big enough to read it. But it was very well done, and too often staff does not get the recognition it deserves for the effort that it takes to put in to this kind of work and to make it readable for board members. And so I thank them very much for that effort.
Thank you. Yes. We have one member of the public that wishes to be heard on item 5, Mr. David Schonbrun. Yes, sir.
I'll just comment that a staff effort till 11 o'clock the night before the test does not constitute what I would consider to be a reasonable effort to review these comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very good. Without objection, that was a report. Without objection, we will move to item 6, which is addressing consideration for the final EIR. Yes.
Good morning, Chairman Pringle and members of the board. My name is Danae Aitchison. I am a Deputy Attorney General with the California Department of Justice and one of the members of your Attorney General's Office legal team that is advising the authority on environmental process needs for the high-speed train system. You're now on agenda item 6, which is the decision point for the revised final program EIR for the Bay Area to Central Valley section of the high-speed train system. You have before you a draft proposed resolution, which has 2 attachments to it. Attachment A are the CEQA findings of fact and statement of overriding consideration, which are in draft form. Attachment B is a proposed mitigation monitoring and reporting program. What I'd like to do is very briefly walk you through the decision-making process and provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions of me if you have questions about the process. The draft resolution is asking you to take a number of steps in a single resolution. The first of these steps is certification of the revised final program environmental impact report. And I'd like to just point out to you for the record that what we're asking you to do today with the resolution is to certify this entire body of material that's before me. This includes the revised material that's addressing the court judgment, as well as the prior 2008 3-volume final program EIR. It's this entire body of material that's before you today. In certifying the revised final program EIR, you're being asked to make 3 certifications which are identified in the draft resolution. The first is that this body of material has been completed in compliance with CEQA. The second is that this body of material has been presented to you and that you have reviewed it and considered the information prior to making your decision. And the third point is that this body of material reflects your independent judgment. That's step 1 in the resolution. The second point in the resolution would be approval of the CEQA findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations. That's contained as Exhibit A to the resolution. This is a legal document that is required by the California Environmental Quality Act. As I believe you may be familiar, under CEQA, a lead agency may not approve a project prior to adopting findings, in essence, that it has mitigated the adverse environmental impacts of the project to the extent feasible, and if there are remaining adverse environmental impacts, that it adopts overriding considerations explaining to the public the benefits of the project that the lead agency feels outweigh any potential lingering environmental impacts. So that's the second and third items that are reflected, or excuse me, yes, the second and third items reflected in the draft resolution. The Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program is also a legal document. This represents the board's commitment to pursue the mitigation strategies that are contained in this document for all of the environmental issue areas outlined, carry them through the environmental process at the project level, and continue to refine them and make them into detailed enforceable measures that would be considered within project-level environmental documents. The fifth step identified in the resolution would be consideration of project approval. If the board chooses to certify the environmental document, and if the board is prepared to adopt findings, a statement of overriding considerations, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, then the board has discretion under CEQA to choose a project, select a project. In this case, you have before you a proposed staff recommendation to approve the Pacheco Pass network alternative serving San Francisco via San Jose, preferred alignments within that network alternative, and station location options. This would be an approval for purposes of further study at the project level. The staff recommendation is before you. I want to note that within the revised final program EIR, you had 21 network alternatives before you. You heard quite a bit about that yesterday. We consider as staff that all of those network alternatives are before you in options. The staff recommendation is identified in the draft resolution as the Pacheco Pass serving San Francisco via San Jose. If the board chooses to make these decisions, the draft resolution also then has a final step of directing staff to file a legal document called a Notice of Determination with the State Clearinghouse, which would mark the conclusion of this revised final program EIR process. So with that, if I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to do so.
Very good. Any questions of staff? What was referenced is the resolution HSRA 11-11 that's in our binder. It has been a public presented proposed resolution as a part of this agenda item upon the presentation of the public of our board packet for this meeting as well. Any board questions at this time? Yes.
The attorney?
Mr. Kopp.
No, I have none to the attorney.
Yes. Mr. Deardon, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask the attorney to state for the record, is there anything that's occurred since the development of this basic document and the information that was developed so effectively by the staff as a result of our testimony yesterday? Is there anything that has occurred that in your mind, as our legal counsel, would inhibit us from taking the action being proposed before us today?
If I understand your question, I would say no. I believe, in my professional judgment, that you have before you a body of material that is in good faith complying with the law, complying with the court judgment, and I'm not aware of anything at this time. And I, in conferring with staff, it's the staff's judgment to move this document forward to you.
Mr. Chairman? That being declared on the record and with the recommendation of the staff after
Mr. Deardon,
thousands of hours of hearings,
yes,
I would like
to
make a comment when the time comes.
Yes, thank you. Perfect. Because if there are no questions of staff, there are a couple members of the public that wish to be heard, and I want to make sure their comments can be heard before we take any action. Yes, Ms. Shank.
Yeah, just in an excess of caution here, you heard the public comment by counsel for City of Atherton yesterday.
Yes.
As our counsel, are you comfortable that the Judge Kenney's decision and requirements were complied with in this process?
Member Schenk, yes, I am. I believe that this is a document that has carefully tried to address the judge's requirements, again, at a program level of detail, which we recognize has been unsatisfying to many.
Okay, thank you.
And just for the record and my understanding, in revising the final program environmental impact report, when did we solicit or seek public comment to that revised environmental impact report?
The official public comment period commenced on March 11th. The
Right.
document was circulated for 45 days.
Yes.
And it was actually posted a week in advance of that on the date of your March board meeting.
So as we gave an added opportunity for public comment yesterday, and want to make sure if there were any last-minute issues or points or concerns that were brought up by the public, we heard them and addressed them. That was much of the purpose of yesterday, is that right?
Correct.
Yet that was not the sole opportunity for the public to comment on the revised final program EIR, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, not only did we comply with the law, we had extended public comment time for the public to be heard, and we responded to those public comments as a part of this document, correct?
Yes, I would characterize that as beyond the legal requirements. When comments come into a public agency at 10 p.m. the day before a proposed decision that's agendized, there is no obligation to provide written responses or even verbal responses. I believe the staff has gone beyond the call of duty on preparing the summary for your benefit so that you're aware of the body of public comment.
Thank you. Very good. Any other questions of staff on item 6? Yes, Mr. Kopp?
Of Mr. Levitt.
Yes. Mr. Levitt?
I want to be sure there's no inconsistency with any legal effect. On page 34, under 1.6.2, the final program EIR refers to our commitment to acquisition from willing sellers of agricultural conservation and/or open space easements encompassing at least 10,000 acres located generally in the vicinity of the alignment.
Correct.
And on page 39 at the top, it is stated that the authority will acquire from willing sellers agricultural conservation easements encompassing at least 3,500 acres of important farmland as defined.
Yes.
Appears on the face of it to be contradictory.
No, those are two separate items, and those would be cumulative. So it would be a total of 13,500 acres in terms of the mitigation commitment.
And in the document, did we also commit to a dollar amount, as I recall?
No, for that particular issue, it's not a dollar amount, it's number of acres. And that's a minimum amount of a commitment. It's an early mitigation commitment for those areas.
My second question relates to the Union Pacific relationship. On page 40 of the summary, there's reference to the UP north-south alternative as the preferred alternative. Yes. But because of uncertainty of negotiating with the UPRR, a continued investigation of other alignments as such. Now, and that's in light of this May 13, 2008 letter and other correspondence from Union Pacific?
Yes.
Okay. Is it the opinion of the staff that it is worth the time and money to to continue to consider that alignment?
Yes.
And that is because, as noted in the program EIR in the summary, there are continuing discussions with the Union Pacific.
That, and also because there is opportunity, as we've noted, to be adjacent to the UPR, and actually that is what we are looking at, is adjacent to UPR alternatives there. The reason that that's being recommended for further study is because it serves the population differently. For example, the UPR corridor actually goes to downtown Modesto, and that does serve that area differently, where we actually come to a city center. And the city of Modesto and other areas really support serving city centers to the Central Valley, so it's important to continue to investigate that particular alternative.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, I'd like to ask forward then those public members of the public who wish to be heard on item 6. First, Mr. Jerry Carlson, and then Ms. Kathy Hamilton.
Good morning. I'm Jerry Carlson, councilperson from the town of Atherton. I spoke yesterday, and I won't repeat what I said, other than the fact I covered there's the issue of ridership and I believe unbalanced treatment between environmental factor weightings for the East Bay versus the peninsula in the document. Atherton is opposing now the Caltrain alignment as a route, and as opposed to the current business plan. There are a number of issues. We talk about additional study that needs to be undertaken. This tiptoeing around the ridership issue that I heard just here a few minutes ago from the Attorney General and from you folks is something that I think is going to come back and bite you. I think that the State Auditor's Office, the Legislative Analyst's Office, as well as the Transportation Committee, the Senate Transportation Committee, are going to be zeroing in on this, and I think to pretend that it's not an issue is a fallacy. The Union Pacific right-of-way certainly is a major issue for you, and it has not been resolved. I think you've got a potential environmental justice issue with North Fair Oaks that butts is between the town of Atherton and Redwood City. There's a chilling effect right now on property values along the peninsula because of high-speed rail. And I think this race for federal funds is causing decision-making that's going to result in not doing it right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kathy Hamilton, and then Ms. Elizabeth Alexis. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. I echo what Jerry Carlson said. I also want to say that the ridership issues, it's not simply a matter of he said, she said. We have 3 experts that have said the model is inadequate. And in addition, as of August 20th, when Judge Kenney was talking to the authorities, council, and petitioners, he added some new information. He said that the petitioners' contentions appear relevant. It wasn't a matter of relevancy that he ruled the way he did. He said that it's really a matter of where, how, when those questions need to be answered. So unfortunately, with the CEQA laws, there is no alternative. If the authority does not wish to answer those ridership questions, there is no other alternative but to sue. No one wants to sue, but that's the only remedy left for us, since you refuse to answer these questions in a court of law with the coram nobis, as well as you refuse to answer them in the EIR. So I ask you, for the sake of the taxpayers of California, that you hold off. Some simple calculations can be done, as Elizabeth Alexis will explain, and do the right thing, and do not certify on a route that surely will not be selected by the FRA. There is no reason to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Elizabeth Alexis, and then Mr. Jim CAHSRA.
Good morning, members of the board. We have submitted extensive written comments in response to the final EIR, but I would like to highlight one issue for you this morning. As Ms. Hamilton said, many of these issues could be resolved in a matter of hours. So we implore you to wait for a month, run them for a couple of hours, and perhaps get your certification years before you might have it otherwise. So the issue that I want to highlight is that we raise the possibility of studying an alternative, which would be an Altamont alternative, which would take the San Jose branch and then travel up the Caltrain corridor to San Francisco. Of all the alternatives that have been studied, for some reason this one had not been looked at, and this was the only one that met the criteria of not splitting the trains in the Bay Area, which was one of the primary issues that was raised with the Altamont alignment, did not require a bay crossing, and served both San Francisco and San Jose. And according to our calculations, which simply come from data from your studies, this would have a lower cost, which might allow some of the other impacts to be mitigated. It would have 15 million more riders than your proposed alignment, and would have lower environmental impacts than either of the alternatives that have been presented. Now, I understand this is late in the game, and if it had required extensive field work, other things, I can see where you might not want to consider it. All it would take is a 2-hour sit down at the computer to figure out the ridership, and you would have your analysis. It is hard for me to understand as a member of the public why you would spend 2 hours responding to our comments, but not 2 hours getting to the final number. So we request that you run these numbers, get the results, and then make a decision. The second item, which we did mention yesterday, is we would ask that from the findings of fact to be removed that these numbers were publicly available from MTC since 2007. We think that is making a mockery of the term publicly available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CAHSRA, and then Mr. Schonbrun.
Chairman Pringle, members of the board, good morning. I'm here today to update you on the progress of the City of Chowchilla ongoing participation in the high-speed rail project and review of the program EIR. We have reviewed the newly proposed LeGrand bypass on the A1 alignment and strongly support this change. We have received technical data from the County Madera that was supplied to them by the high-speed rail staff. This data begins to outline the road closures and anticipated grade separations that affect us on the alignments and the alternatives. We have and continue to evaluate the detailed effects of the east-west, north-south intersection on Chowchilla, its general plan, and sphere of influence. We are concerned that the program EIR indicates that CAHSRA is the heavy maintenance facility preferred. To date, there are many viable sites that have not yet been completely evaluated. As we have said all along, we look forward to opening a dialogue with the authority so that this system can be built in the timelines required. Thank you.
Thank you. The mayor brings up a question, Mr. Levitt, that if I could just have it publicly clarified, that it was referenced in the discussion yesterday and again today about CAHSRA as a site for the heavy maintenance facility. It was referenced somewhat solely, but that, in fact, doesn't mean in any regard that is the sole potential site for a heavy maintenance facility.
You're absolutely correct. And actually, even in the document, it wasn't for a heavy maintenance site. It was just a maintenance site that is identified at the program level. This is project-level detail that we're talking about for the heavy maintenance facility.
So in the programmatic EIR, CAHSRA is referenced, but yes, as we have been addressing project-level EIR specificity within the Central Valley segments, there are multiple sites that will be considered, correct, and nothing will prejudge or prioritize CAHSRA as a preferred site, yes, through that project-level review, correct?
You're correct.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Schonbrun, and then following Ms. Schonbrun, Mr. Fleischman. Yes, sir.
David Schonbrun, Transdev. In my comments earlier this morning, I spoke to the inherently cursory nature of a staff report produced the night before essentially cramming for a final exam. In these comments, I seek to speak to the public process aspects of having a staff report released the morning of the meeting that in fact contains critical information for board members. I have grave doubts as to whether any or many of you board members have actually read this document. I know I certainly have not had time to read it or give it appropriate consideration, so it's clear to me that it's not possible to render the kind of independent judgment that you are claiming to render in your resolution of certification. And to that effect, I say that I think it's highly inappropriate to drop this staff report on this meeting this morning and then act on it. It's just not thoughtful, and it just does not provide adequate time for comprehension. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fleischman, and then Mr. Ravi Mehta.
Good morning, Chair Pringle and board members. I spoke yesterday, and I have this document, 11-page document in response to all of the comments that were received yesterday, oral and written. I have to say I don't think it's adequate. I wanted to focus on two items. One is on the model coefficients and the dispute between the Institute for Transportation Studies and Cambridge Systematics. The staff report and your legal counsel from the Attorney General essentially claim this is a battle of experts and you get to choose which expert you believe. Well, that's true if the opinions of the experts on both sides are based on substantial evidence. However, on one specific point, which is a crucial point, which is the headway coefficient that was put into the model by Cambridge Systematics, the ITS analysis and critique makes it very clear that the problem with that coefficient, it's not based on substantial evidence. There is no evidence to support the use of that coefficient. It's based solely on what the modelers state is their professional opinion or their professional expertise. Professional expertise is not substantial evidence. And I have to say you don't have the right to choose an expert's opinion when there's not substantial evidence to back it up, and we'll discuss that in court. The other point has to do with the traffic issues and the fact that there are impacts on highways beyond Highway 101 that were not disclosed in this final EIR. And the staff's analysis is say, we'll deal with that at the project level. Well, I'm sorry, but when you have a significant impact, you can't just put it off to the project level. You have to identify it. You have to explain why it's significant, what can be done about it. You may say at the project level, at the program level, we can't deal with it. And this is what the Sacramento Old City Association case says. It says if you identify an impact at the project program level and you can mitigate it, you can mitigate it. If you can't mitigate it, then you can basically identify it as significant and then put over further analysis at the project level. But you can't simply ignore a significant impact and say we'll deal with that at the project level. That's inappropriate. You're trying to make new law in the CEQA, and that law that you're trying to make is in basic violation of CEQA's mandate. The people of San Jose have a right to know about the significant impacts on their city from this project, and you're not telling them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mehta.
Good morning. Mr. Chairman, members, Ravi Mehta appearing on behalf of the cities of Palo Alto, Atherton, and Menlo Park. This authority has a lot of discretion and is extremely powerful, as you know. Each and every one of you has and will affect the lives of millions of people by the decisions that you make. And you will all change the face of communities forever. But it appears that there is someone much more powerful than you, and you have unknowingly abdicated your discretion and authority and empowered others to make decisions for you. Your engineering consultants and staff predetermine the decisions that you make. They feed you with executive summaries devoid of all facts that would allow you to compare, question, and assess the impacts of viable alternatives. I am confident that none of you have read each and every document that's before you here, and I would be surprised if you have. When concerned citizens and elected officials raise concerns offer suggestions and objections, they are publicly brushed aside, and their thoughtful comments are never considered by the consultants or the authority. The public comment process, with all the informational hearings for the purpose of accepting EIR comments, appear to be nothing more than a charade to meet the minimum EIR requirements. None of the comments are truly considered. When questions and concerns are raised, this authority should question its consultants and staff to ensure that what is being presented and voted on is in fact accurate. Rather than question and verify Cambridge Systematics ridership study, this authority attacked 3 scholars known throughout the world for their expertise. While you are advocates for the high-speed rail system, it is your responsibility to protect the interests of the affected communities and citizens. It is not a zero-sum game where the winner takes all. You need to begin to play the role of puppet master and not continue to be the puppets of the consultants. I urge you to look into the concerns raised by the speakers before me and the written comments presented. Ask the difficult questions of your consultants and staff. Get another opinion on the ridership study, and look carefully at the facts that are presented to you. I urge you to defer approval of the EIR until you've had an opportunity to address all of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further public comment on this item, now bring it back to the board. Are there any additional board comments? And after careful consideration by the board, Mr. Dearden.
Mr. Chairman, I have to restrain myself from commenting on each one of the negative remarks.
Yes, please.
Which we have carefully addressed in testimony over many months, and therefore I shall restrain myself.
Thank you.
But I think it is necessary to put on the record that each one of those comments have been refuted authoritatively, both in testimony before our board and in written information provided to us from our staff. And that being the case, and having conducted the environmental review for the Northern Mountain Crossing study adjustment as directed by Judge Kenney, I therefore move the approval of Resolution HSR A11-11 in all parts and attachments.
Very good. A motion by Mr. Dearden, second by Mr. Kopp of the resolution that is a part of this packet, which directly references the certification of revised final program EIR, approval of CEQA findings of fact, approval of statement of overriding considerations, adoption of mitigation monitoring and reporting program, approval of the Pacheco Pass Network alternative serving San Francisco via San Jose, preferred alignments and preferred station location options, as well as outline of next steps. That's the resolution that's before us. Mr. Kopp.
Yeah, I just want to be sure of this, and anybody from staff who's competent to do so can answer. Is it a fact that this is the third occasion on which the board since 2005 has been presented with a recommended program EIR for certification? Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate.
Thank you.
This is a legal record, so it needs to be on the record.
He yelled that past the court reporter, so she got it. All right, we have a motion and a second before us. Any further discussion by the board? Seeing none, may we have a roll call?
Chairman Pringle?
Aye.
Mr. Umber? Mr. Burns? Mr. Crane?
Aye.
Mr. Dearden?
Aye.
Ms. Flores?
Aye.
Mr. Katz?
Aye.
Mr. Kopp?
Aye.
And Ms. Schiff?
Aye.
Very good. If, without objection, I'd like to then continue and move to item 7, which concludes this issue that's before us. Mr. Van Ark, would you present that item briefly?
As Mr. Chairman, as the board has adopted this resolution, the next step would be filing of a notice of determination with the State Clearinghouse. And prior to filing this The filing is for appropriate notice with the Department of Fish and Game and preparing the administrative report for this matter. We, as staff, recommend that the board approve and adopt the attached resolution, which is under Section 7 of the binders, and adopt the attached resolution providing a delegation of authority to myself as Chief Executive Officer to take whatever steps are necessary, including the execution of a contract to accomplish the preparation of the administrative record concerning the revised final program EIR for the Bay Area to Central Valley portion of the high-speed train system.
Very good. This issue is before us. Mr. Fleischman asked to be heard. I don't know if it's separate on this item as well. As you wish. Yes, sir.
I have an objection to just one part of this proposal, and that is about the contract for the administrative record. I'm presuming that the reason why you want to prepare an administrative record is because you expect to end up back in court. Otherwise, I don't see any reason for doing that. However, if you are going to be back in court, you're going to be back in court under the California Environmental Quality Act. And under that act, and specifically under Public Resources Code, Section 21167.6, subsection, I believe it's B, the petitioners, which is to say those challenging the decision, have the right to prepare the record themselves. When you did the last certification and the last approval for this program EIR, you went ahead and made the exact same decision and had the record prepared yourselves, in spite of the fact that the petitioners in that matter did not want to have the authority prepare the record. We ended up reaching a compromise where, since you had already prepared the record, in spite of us not asking anyone else about it, to say, fine, we will assume the cost of preparing the record. Now, of course, you lost that suit, so you would have had to assume that cost anyhow. But if you go ahead and prepare the record without allowing the petitioners their right to do it themselves, you're going to end up having to eat that cost, regardless of how the lawsuit turns out, because you're not going according to CEQA. So I would ask that you remove that from your approval. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Kopp.
The point is understandable, and the board has received testimony concerning the intent of some objectors to the recommended program EIR recertification indicating litigation. And Mr. Fleischman is correct that under the law it's the obligation of a challenger of an EIR to secure preparation and to pay for preparation. The fact of the matter is, in many instances, petitioners, because of lack of sufficient funds, will enter into arrangements like the one Mr. Fleischman described last year or the year before with respect to preparing the administrative record from our July 8, 2008 action. And I have no desire to spend taxpayer money on an unnecessary act, because I infer from some of the testimony that objectors are fully able monetarily to pay for the administrative record, which will not be cheap. So I would suggest modifying the resolution under the resolve clause so that states the chief executive officer is delegated authority, including execution of a contract, to accomplish preparation of the administrative record related to the revised final program EIR, if necessary, and at a reasonable cost.
There's a modified motion before us. Is there a second?
Could I?
Ms. Shank seconds. Yes, Mr. Dearden.
Two eminent attorneys on the board have indicated a desire to proceed in that direction, and as much as I respect their legal skills, Our attorney is the Attorney General, and I'd like to hear from the Attorney General's office as to the propriety of the action pending.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Certainly, Chairman and board members. The purpose of this resolution is to provide a mechanism for the board to prepare an administrative record efficiently. Typically speaking, when you have a threat of litigation like this, the agency doesn't always wait 30 days to see who sues it, but will start organizing itself. But I think the most important point here is it provides a mechanism already approved for this board if it comes to pass that you have multiple litigation filed, and after complying with the requirements to offer petitioners the opportunity to prepare the record, should it become necessary, this matter wouldn't need to come back to the board. Certainly it's the prerogative of the board to take it up next month after seeing how many lawsuits are filed. We don't think that this violates CEQA. We think this provides a mechanism in the event that the petitioners request this authority to prepare the record.
But with the motion that was presented, or the modification of the resolution by Mr. Kopp, does that in any way limit what you would be seeking to accomplish?
No, I do think it clarifies the matter, it's if necessary, and I do think that's a helpful correction.
Very good. There's a motion and a second before us. Any further discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. As amended. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. So what I'd like to do is, without objection, return back to item number 1 of public comment and ask those people who have general public comments to address the board. First, I will ask Supervisor Henry Perea and then Brad Samuelson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, good morning. Here today just to give a brief presentation. Fresno Works is again before you, showing our strong support for high-speed rail and for the alignment as it goes through Fresno and our valley. And I just wanted we have passed out a booklet to you just very quickly. The I Want My High-Speed Train video contest is a contest that we've launched in Fresno. And there's a prize, our sponsor, the Fresno County Federal Credit Union, and the grand prize is $2,012 to the winner of the most unique video submitted. In 2012, obviously, is decision year. So just for your information, Leanne Eager from the EDC will be talking about thinking outside the tracks in a minute. And also encloses an August 25th letter to you all reconfirming the Fresno County's support of high-speed rail and, of course, the alignment. And the last thing is just an FYI. I think it shows that California is getting on the map. It's an article taken out of the Washington Post on Sunday, July 25th. And if you see the picture of the map, designates, says, "Welcome to Fresno, home of high-speed rail development." Now, the significance of that is that we wish that was a completely true statement today. I think the point is that people are recognizing around this nation, the good work that's being done all over California. And I think they're recognizing the good work that we're doing with Fresno Works. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Got a big PR team going on there. That's something. Mr. Brad Samuelson and then Mr. Bill Martin. Yes, sir.
Chairman Pringle, members of the authority, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. As was said, my name is Brad Samuelson. I'm representing Preserve Our Heritage. Preserve Our Heritage is a group of farmers in Merced and Madera County, and their key objective is to protect their businesses and their way of life. I've been following high-speed rail for many months and have attended several of your board meetings, and I appreciate that you prefer to not only hear what groups are opposed to, but also what they support. And this group supports using existing corridors. Our region has there are high impacts in our region because it is the area where the east-west alignment meets the north-south alignment, so there's very much track there. There's a lot of track there. Specifically, with the San Jose to Merced route, we support the Henry Miller to Highway 152 alignment. This alignment was withdrawn from consideration during the preliminary alternatives analysis phase, and we support that analysis, or that alignment being brought back into consideration and included in the project EIS-EIR. With regard to the Merced to Fresno alignment, this group supports the A2 route
this route aligns with the UP corridor and promotes redevelopment. Any other alignment that is under consideration in this area is greenfield and does not support sound environmental planning. Now, the program EIR that you guys are addressing today, you mentioned some ag mitigation in regards to the amount of land that would be set aside and the amount of the different types of farmland. Well, before those mitigations in the EIR, there are mitigations referring to avoiding farmland first, and second, using existing corridors, and that is what we support. You may remember in April that the authority withdrew from consideration alignment A3, and the staff's recommendation for withdrawing this alignment is, I think, very telling in expressing our concerns. I'm going to read a couple sentences from the staff recommendation. A3 is a greenfield alternative and does not meet the authority's key project objective to maximize the use of existing transportation corridors, and it would lead to unwanted development patterns that may erode the economic viability of these agricultural lands in Madera County. This alternative would diagonally divide already small farms and possibly reduce economic incentives to continue farming. This alternative has received strong opposition from the City and County of Merced and the County of Madera, and it has received strong resistance from members of the agricultural community. This impact on Madera may have a more dramatic effect than elsewhere in the state because agriculture is the largest industry in Madera County.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to hear from Mr. Bill Martin and then Ms. Diana Lacombe.
Chairman Primo, members of the board, good morning. I'm Bill Martin, Executive Director of the Central Valley Farmland Trust, and our office is in Elk Grove, California. The Central Valley Farmland Trust is a nonprofit public benefit agricultural land trust engaged in the protection of farmland in the Central Valley, mainly through the voluntary acquisition of agricultural conservation easements from willing landowners. We currently hold over 11,200 acres of easements and have formal agreements with several jurisdictions to facilitate their farmland mitigation programs. The Central Valley Farmland Trust works with all stakeholders in an effort to protect farmland while taking into consideration the growth objectives of the local jurisdictions. We're not a political advocacy group, nor do we support or oppose specific development projects. Central Valley Farmland Trust is a fully accredited and professionally staffed land trust and adheres to the highest industry standards. We are acutely concerned over the dramatic loss of farmland in the central San Joaquin Valley. And let me quantify. Between 1990 and 2000, in the counties from Kern in the south to Butte in the north, we lost approximately 223,000 acres of high-quality farmland. And that's just high-quality farmland. The total agricultural land lost to development was quite a bit higher. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's fair to say that between 2000 and 2005, that rate substantially increased. This phenomenon was driven by exploding population increases caused from immigration into California and migration from high-priced coastal areas to the less expensive inland valley. And now the high-speed rail project will add a new dimension in having a dramatic impact on the productive capability of the farmland of San Joaquin Valley. The proposed high-speed rail project's revised EIR discusses the fact valuable farmland will be impacted and that farmland mitigation will be necessary to offset that loss. For the board's review and consideration, I've included a hard copy informational packet in which I provided our farmland mitigation guidelines. As I pointed out earlier in my comments, Central Valley Farmland Trust has worked effectively with several jurisdictions in administering farmland mitigation programs in the Central Valley. We have also been engaged by others to assist in crafting new farmland mitigation programs. And most importantly, we have a track record of dealing effectively and efficiently with farmers and landowners, which substantially enhances the mitigation process. Farmland in the central San Joaquin Valley is the most productive farmland in the world. Ag commodity sales in the 8 counties in the Central Valley, roughly around $16 billion, give or take a few, with an economic rippling impact of about 5 to 1. Central Valley Farmland Trust looks forward to working
with you and assisting in your efforts to minimize the loss of this incredibly valuable and non-renewable resource. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Chairman, will there be a chance to comment on his remarks at some point? Because I think they're very important. Or would it be appropriate to do that now, briefly?
If you'd like to now, briefly, Mr.
I'd like to compliment the gentleman on what they're trying to do. I think it's terribly important as we see a doubling of population from 2000 to 2050 in the state. It's one of the reasons why we've determined to, wherever at all possible, locate our stations in downtown cores so that there can be a focusing of growth rather than sprawl. And I only wish you had been in existence 50 years ago to help Santa Clara County from becoming wall-to-wall homes. So good luck in what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Ms. Diana Lacombe, and then Mr. Bobby Kahn. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Chairman Pringle and members of the board. I am Diana Lacombe, President of the National Concilio of America, an association of Hispanic Latino businesses and human care organizations. NCA is also a member of APAC that you've heard from before. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning. Thank you also for considering DOT's 49 CFR Part 26, the DBE program, as part of the high-speed rail project. Today, I wish to address environmental justice issues within the environmental impact study and the EIR phases of transportation planning. Transportation projects consume a major portion of federal, state, and local budgets, yet few community members or taxpayers participate in the decision-making process. Environmental justice's goal is to make sure that the benefits and adverse impacts of transportation projects are shared fairly among affected communities. Environmental justice is not a new concept. It originated with Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. In 1969, the Environmental Protection Act, NEPA, required federal agencies to analyze the environmental impacts of their actions, particularly on minority and low-income communities. Various federal actions have taken place between 1964 and 2000, including the establishment in 1992 of the Office of Environmental Equity within the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The office was later named the Office of Environmental Justice. In 1970, California established CEQA, which requires government agencies to identify significant environmental impacts of their actions. In 1999, California Senate Bill 115, Chapter 690 stated that environmental justice is the fair treatment of people of all races, cultures, and incomes with respect to the development, adoption, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws and policies. It is interesting to note that staff at transportation agencies know very little about environmental justice and its application to, quote, people. The general public and transportation agency staff are familiar with the required protection of birds, snakes, and other wildlife, but have little or no knowledge of its requirements and responsibilities to minority and low-income communities. I have heard many well-prepared attorneys representing cities and counties, particularly in the peninsula. I have heard other special interest groups address the authority as is their legal right. However, I have not heard anyone address environmental issues relative to large minority communities that will be impacted with the high-speed rail program. The Hispanic community, the largest ethnic group in the state of California, has had little or no voice regarding the largest public works project in the nation. Yet the high-speed rail project will be going through predominant Hispanic communities, from San Jose to Merced, Bakersfield, Palmdale, Inland Empire, Los Angeles, and San Diego. How many of these taxpayers were involved in the planning process? How many are currently being addressed to join the process? Yet this community will be disproportionately impacted by construction disruptions, dust, dirt, noise, and possible loss of homes and businesses.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking this into consideration as you move with the project.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Bobby Kahn and Ms. Leanne Eager. Yes, sir.
Chairman Pringle, members of the board, Bobby Kahn, Executive Director, Madera County Economic Development Commission. I'd like to start my comments by thanking Mr. Van Ark for his visit recently to Madera County. Also appreciated very much his candid remarks and for being very honest about the high-speed rail and how it could impact Madera County. These comments were especially concerning how tight the budget is regarding the high-speed rail system, which will leave a very limited amount for mitigation measures. With those comments in mind, I hope that the staff and the board will have the same consideration for the City of Madera and the City of Chowchilla as they do with the City of Hanford and Corcoran, and going around those cities to minimize the impacts on those cities. The high-speed rail alignment A2 goes right through the middle of our two incorporated cities with no economic benefit. Mr. Van Ark also made the comment at our meeting that when your neighbors are doing well, you will do well. I've never seen the County of Fresno, the City of Fresno, the City of Merced, or the County of Merced ever share any of their revenues with the county or the cities of Madera or Chowchilla. So I would take those comments with a grain of salt. In closing, I would like to invite Mr. Van Ark back for further meetings and discussions along with Chairman Pringle and any other board members. And I thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. Ms. Leanne Eager, and then Mr. Rich Matias.
Good morning, Chairman Pringle, board members. First, I want to thank you, Chairman Pringle, for clearing up the high-speed train maintenance facility issue with CAHSRA. We appreciate that. Secondly, I was pleased to be able to read the latest public opinion poll last week on high-speed train, and as it showed, Californians overwhelmingly still support the high-speed train. And one of the reasons that those who did have concerns mentioned that they do is because of lack of education. And so on that note, as I mentioned last month, the EDC of Fresno County is going to have their annual event focus around high-speed train. And what we're doing that for is to educate and inform the public. We had originally thought it was going to be the Central Valley people coming to learn, but in the last month I've gotten calls from people all over the state, all over the country, and then last week some people from an international company asking to come. But I wanted at this time to publicly thank Mr. Deredon and Mr. Van Ark for agreeing to come and speak at our event on October 28th. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rich Matias and Mr. Gary Gallegos.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment. I'm Rich Matias. I'm the administrator of the California Farm Bureau Federation. A little out of sync here because I didn't put down item number 8, and I was going to refer to a letter that will be submitted to you today a little later on from a group of farm organizations, including 6 county farm bureaus, all of which, of course, are affiliated with the California Farm Bureau. And I won't reiterate those points because you're going to hear them later, and I know your time is precious. I do want to say that we embrace all the points that are going to be made in that letter. I will say that the concerns that we have as a California Farm Bureau are completely in sync with the letter that's going to be presented. I will mention some of those. Certainly we're concerned about the consumption of farmland, which you just heard addressed by another speaker. I'd like to see that minimized. Using existing transportation corridors would get us to that point, and so that's certainly something that we embrace. That's a resource that Farm Bureau, many of you know who have served in the legislature, has been committed to farmland preservation for many years, and so we want to do everything possible in this process to be consistent with that. We are concerned about disruption of farming practices, which I'm sure you've heard before, as lands are bisected or as the corridors disrupt irrigation, movement of equipment and the like. Those result in increased costs for members, so we're concerned about that. We think that farmers and ranchers in the area should be made whole for all of their costs. We think that's fair. You will hear about the fact that there's the loss of future earnings. That's a concern. Increase the cost of doing business at the time. There'll be impacts on productivity on lands that are adjacent to the corridor, so we're certainly concerned about that. And then just the general devaluation of farmland that is adjacent to a transportation corridor, and we think all those things should be taken into consideration and mitigated. Just 2 other points. We are concerned about the projections on ridership, and you had some testimony on that earlier. I think that might be overstated, and that should be taken into consideration. And lastly, if it's possible, it's something we've discussed in our group and meeting with our county farm bureaus, if you could have an agricultural liaison appointed within your staff who has expertise in that area that can evaluate those economic impacts, we think that would be something worthy of your consideration, to have a voice within your team that we can work with. We're not just saying no, we're just saying that we'd like to have somebody as part of your team to work with on mitigating these impacts on agriculture. So thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments, and I will keep in mind that them in a juxtaposed concept with some of the other speakers that were here today, because it is becoming very interesting for me as I learn the state in such finite detail. Transportation corridors that we look to be close by that go through the middle of cities certainly disrupt cities and towns. So we hear people come before us that say, don't do that. And then to try to ensure that you're not disrupting in the middle of cities and towns, moving them slightly out of town, and in so doing, particularly in Central Valley, you disrupt farmland. And we certainly hear more from the Farm Bureau in that regard. It is one of those balancing acts, and I think that everyone rightfully deserves a place at the table. But from my perspective, and you're not only welcome at this meeting, but every meeting we have, we certainly hear from the farm bureaus in a variety of counties. That is that ping pong ball that we see batted back and forth from this seat. It is watching a ping pong tournament, so to speak, to see that go back and forth, and we understand it, and that really is the challenge of our staff and our team and many of the consultants and engineers. So your engagement is very welcome, and please share that with all of your individual county affiliates. Speaking of farming, Mr. Gallegos brings the good news of farming in San Diego forward, I'm sure. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the High-Speed Rail Authority here. I want to try to draw your attention south, San Diego. You've been spending a lot of time in the Bay Area and in the Central Valley. And again, my name is Gary Gallegos. I'm the Executive Director for the San Diego Association of Governments, also known as SANDAG. And on behalf of the 18 cities in the county, I want to advocate, we're here to advocate, plead that we continue to work on the LA to San Diego piece of the high-speed rail work. Your work is critical to us as we're in the process of updating our regional transportation plan, our long-term plan that would take us out with a vision to meet the transportation needs of San Diego to the year 2050, and high-speed rail is an important component of that. But I think it's important that we continue to make progress at trying to figure out how we get through the alternative analysis and how we get through all the planning piece so that we can get to the point where we're here arguing whether we should like alignment A1 or A2 or A3. And I think we're a little behind the curve. But I'm confident that if we can catch up, that you're going to find that the LA to San Diego piece will not only have strong ridership, but will have, I think, competitive costs in terms of its construction. And so we're excited about this. Our mayor from San Diego has been here before to talk about how all this ties into the plans that we have for a major intermodal center at the airport. And so again, I'm here to advocate, help you hopefully focus a little bit to the south, at the very south end of the state, at San Diego County and the region there. And we remain committed to working and partnering with you guys to figure out how we get this done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And if I may ask Ms. Spiegel to also speak under public comments. You noted you wish to speak on item 3. I think I know what you're going to speak on, so it might just fit best under public comments. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Chairman Spiegel and members of the authority. I am Karen Spiegel, Mayor of the City of Corona. And the City of Corona is a potential station site in the Los Angeles to San Diego corridor via the Inland Empire. And I'm here this morning to show our support, positive today, show our support of the authority's efforts to establish policies for station area development, and the authority's effort to assist local agencies technically and financially in considering the implications of these policies at potential station sites. Based on your draft policies, Corona has studied the land uses around potential high-speed rail station sites in Corona, and we have assessed the potential and intensification and complementary uses around these sites. While these studies are conceptual in nature, They provide a vision for Corona's leaders and lay the foundation for a realistic station area if the site is ultimately selected for the station. Our efforts focused on creating a greater vision that takes full advantage of the new transportation alternative within the geographical region. We have provided you each with a beautiful visual summary of the efforts and look forward to working with your staff. Now in the back, not only do you have all the pages and the information, there is a CD in the back so that you could take this and look at it further. We've really enjoyed working on this. We enjoy the future of the high-speed rail and look forward to working with your staff. And thank you for the opportunity to share today.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I thought that was the presentation, and what happened yesterday at the Executive Committee was asking to continue the issue on the high-speed station area development policy, so I didn't want to...
Well, now you have a sample to look for.
Exactly. That works perfectly. Thank you very much. Mr. Cruz, do you wish to be heard at this time? Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Joe Cruz on behalf of the California Alliance for Jobs. And again, I'll be extremely brief. The Alliance was one of the organizations who took the lead on helping place and pass the high-speed rail bond measure. And to be honest, over time, they've grown increasingly frustrated with just the environmental process in general. We can't afford to wait for the fifth or sixth draft of an EIR. The industry I represent, the heavy construction industry, is hemorrhaging in this economy with 30 to 40% unemployment. California lost 6,500 jobs last month, construction jobs, and over 100,000 last year due to the downturn in the economy. We feel it's the responsibility of this board and even us as members of the public who were involved in this campaign to uphold the will of the voters and get a project moving in the right direction, get dirt turning, and get people to work. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment portion of the meeting. I'd like to address item number 2, which is approval of meeting minutes. Motion to approve the minutes by Mr. Dearden, second by Ms. Shank. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The minutes are therefore approved. Report from the Executive Administrative Committee of yesterday. There were 3 items that were before us. As I just stated, the high-speed train station area development policy. We asked for that to be continued for another month so that it would appear back before our committee next month as we continue to solicit input and communication with various cities and communities that would be involved. As a legislative update, the committee took action to direct our CEO to work with the governor's office on the bills that were presented that do affect the high-speed rail authority. And as it pertains to board policies and procedures, there were 3 offered by Mr. Kopp, a modification to our board policies, and the committee voted not to adopt those. So is there a motion to concur with the executive committee's report?
Mr. Chairman.
A motion by Ms. Flores, seconded by myself. Mr. Kopp, yes, sir.
With respect to the 3 board policies which I proposed, the committee did not take action on them. The committee chairman announced that there was no second, and therefore those 3 policies are before the board today. And I intend to and will take up each of those 3 policies with a brief explanation separately. In addition to that, our board policies further provide that committee action is merely advisory. But if you'll recall, the chair announced that there would be no action because of a lack of a second. And so I would now move the first of those proposed board policies, which has been designated as proposed amendment to Board Policies and Procedures number 1, and which states that any board member may secure placement of a matter for information or action on the monthly agenda of the board.
Mr. Kopp,
a member may also
Mr. Kopp, if I could just ask you just briefly, let's do this in an orderly fashion. So first, If there's no objection to adopt the Executive Committee's recommendation on the first two items that I had presented, is there any objection to any member of the committee on the high-speed rail station development policy being continued or the action of the committee on the legislative update? Yes, Mr. Crane?
I think I'd like an explanation of what it would mean to vote in favor of the motion that's now in front of us. Would that mean that we would not then get a chance to discuss?
All I'm doing is trying to bifurcate the two so that we can maintain a focus on, one, adopting the two that are not controversial, the two action items, and then we'll discuss specifically the board policies that Mr. Kopp wishes to bring forward.
So which two are the non-controversial ones?
The first one is, if you look at your agenda, there are three items.
Yeah.
No, there are three items listed. One is the station development policy. I believe the the committee unanimously asked to continue that for 30 days. I'm asking the board to concur in that.
So there was action, which is asking us to...
Right, to continue that item for 30 days. And also the committee took action to receive a legislative update and direct our CEO to work with the governor's office on those bills dealing with high-speed rail. That was a unanimous action of our committee. So I'm asking the board to concur in those two actions.
Can we do them one at a time?
Okay. All right. Is there any objection to continuing the high-speed train station area development policy for 30 days? Seeing no objection, we shall do that. The legislative update, we had a presentation by Mr. Shive on all of the legislative issues pertaining to high-speed rail that passed or did not pass through the legislature, and in those four areas where there were bills dealing with the high-speed rail authority, we empowered the CEO to work with the governor's office on those. So, Ms. Schenk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, dealing with the governor's office, meaning taking the positions that we have taken and making sure that our views are heard on those positions. Okay.
Or not necessarily taking the positions that we have taken, because some of the bills we haven't taken a position on, because, in fact, there were bills that were written with new language the very last night of session. So, in fact, working with the governor's office and ensuring that they know the impacts with the high-speed rail authority.
Okay, those are the ones that I'm most concerned about, but I can have a conversation with Mr. Van Ark about that. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the committee's position to stand on that item? Seeing none, therefore, Mr. Kopp presented and the committee rejected three different modifications to our board policies and procedures. They're all three in your book under that the committee tab. Mr. Kopp.
Thank you. The second sentence of proposed amendment to board policies and procedures states a member may also place a matter on the agenda of a committee which has subject matter jurisdiction of such matter. And this would be, as indicated, a new Article 3, Section E, Paragraph 1 provision. And it's based upon the fact this is a small governing body, and there have been a couple instances in which no action was taken. Most recently, a couple of months ago, Member Schenk proposed a kind of risk management committee, and I would have liked to have had a discussion of that, and so that's the reason for the proposed amendment to the board policies, and I would have moved that proposed amendment.
Mr. Kopp moves that amendment to the board policies and procedures, and Ms. Schenk seconds it. Yes, Ms. Schenk.
I have a couple of questions. Mr. Chairman, you said that the executive committee rejected this.
Yes.
But I heard Judge Kopp say that no action was taken.
No, that's not true.
Ah, okay. So this one was actually rejected. I'd like to know why.
All right.
Well, motion, there was no second. The chair ruled that it died for lack of a second.
because the other two members present objected to the addition of either of these three amendments to the board policies and procedures. On this one, I articulated at the meeting that I felt it's not necessarily a policy or procedure that I would support, that any member can put any item on any agenda of any committee or the board at will. I believe that there should be a process by which we need to establish that, either through the chair, the CEO, or the chairs of committees. Mr. Kopp referenced, for example, Ms. Schenck, an item you brought forward, and I believe action has been taken on that in terms of meeting with you and directing the CEO to begin that process to see what steps need to be taken to implement that. Not just to put it on the agenda and say that it, or drop it. It wasn't dropped. Your point wasn't. And every member during public comment or member comment before this authority can bring up any issue. I don't know if it's a board policy that I would support, that any member can at any time through the course of a month place whatever they wish on any committee's agenda. That's what Mr. Kopp was seeking with this board policy amendment, and I don't support it.
Question for the chair?
Yes, Mr. Katz.
As I'm reading this, that would include things that have been dealt with in committee and defeated, could be placed by the member who didn't get their way in the committee, couldn't convince the committee, so they could then bypass. So what's the point of committees at that point, I guess? That's my question. If we're going to redo the whole thing up here, let's just save the time, skip the committees.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Dearden.
I'm a little bit conflicted on the issue. I believe in strong chairs. I think a body needs strong leadership, and this policy would undermine the ability of a chair to control the workflow of the body. At the same time, if there was a pattern on the part of a chair to restrict legitimate issues from coming to the board, I think we ought to have this passed. I don't see that pattern. So it may be that the appropriate way to handle this is to, and to balance those two somewhat in conflict issues, is to set the proposal aside and reconsider it if at some point in the future a member feels that an issue that they want to present has not been properly brought before the board. But as long as the will of an individual member is not thwarted inappropriately by the chair, then you avoid the difficulty that Richard's talking about, and that is having issues that have been debated and turned down by a committee also then brought over the objection of the committee to the full board, and therefore thwarting the will of the committee.
Sounds very reasonable. I will point to the fact that this item is an item Mr. Kopp wished to bring forward, and it was not shunned or rejected from being a part of the agenda. Thus, I don't necessarily see there is an issue in that regard. But Ms. Schenck?
Thank you. I didn't know that this was coming before your committee, so I'm just reading it now. But I do agree with Member Dearden about the importance of strong chairs, and I like procedure and all of that. I don't see the harm in adjusting the section that talks about setting the agenda, not necessarily with the words here as proposed by Judge Kopp, but in some way to acknowledge that members have the right to bring matters to the committees and to the board. We all know that to be the case, but for future generations of members to make it very clear that this is our expectation and our policy. So maybe we can go back and, massage the words a bit to put that in there, because there are, not so far with our board where it's become a big problem, but there are occasions where things go through a committee, and a committee of 3 may be of one view, but the rest of the board may be of a different view, and on that matter, it should be brought to the full board. Just because the committee votes it down doesn't speak for the whole board. So with that in mind, if we could go back and do a little wordsmithing on that and maybe revisit it, and I'll take a look at it, too, if that's okay with Judge Kopp.
Well, some boards that I sit on certainly have the right of the chair to place items on their agenda, but also have an opportunity for members to bring an item forward and have, in a public sense, not in this sense that these items were placed on this agenda without the chair's knowledge or anything else, but in fact have a sense where an item is brought forward publicly and where you say, this is an important item to me, I'd like to have it agendized for consideration, where one board member can bring it up and have at least one other board member agree to have that a part of an agenda. That is
that's a good
process that has been used that's sensible, as opposed to a concept that everybody just put on any agenda, even committees in areas where they don't participate, whatever they want, whenever they want. And that's what this leads to my concern.
I think that's a reasonable approach, Judge Kopp.
Yes, Mr. Dearden.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the more I'm thinking about this, and from rather extensive background, as have others of you here, in regard to legislative process, the more I'm convinced that we do need a screening process. The chair is typically used in terms of allowing issues to come before the body without some screen. And I'm thinking now about the action that Richard mentioned in terms of having things come to us time and time again that may have already been decided, and maybe, we've been very collegial as a board, but there may be a time when you'll have factions on this board that would not be so collegial, and that one person could tie the board up terrifically by refusing to accede to the chair and not bringing material up that had been decided upon before. There's another aspect also, and that is that we oftentimes handle issues that are legally delicate. And by having a matter have to go through the chair before it is automatically agendized, the AG's office and our other legal advisors have an opportunity of looking at the matter and deciding whether it should be before the board in an open session or at all, given a legally delicate circumstance. So the more I'm thinking about it, the more I sense that in our unique kind of a body, you need a screen. Otherwise, a future board can be tied up forever. And I don't know whether I'm backing myself into that position through an application of excess logic or I'm really there, but I'm beginning to feel more strongly.
I see. So there's a motion, a second, before us to adopt this policy.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Scott.
Well, 2 points. One, with respect to these items being on the committee's agenda, we were on there pursuant to a prior month's consideration under the general rubric of board policies. And then secondly, with respect to Mr. Katz's point, I remind the members that Article 5 A4 states specifically, unless otherwise provided by the board, which we did 2 months ago, 2 months ago in regard to the ARRA supplemental application, the board committees serve in an advisory capacity only, make their recommendations to the full board, and do not provide direction to authority, staff, or consultants. And the proposed addition is consistent with the fact that committees are advisory only and are subject to board decisions.
Yes, Mr. Kopp, that's correct, and that's why at the beginning of this item, we went and restated to every member of the board what occurred in committee and asked for the board to concur in that. You've asked for this item to be separately discussed, and we are. And yes, you are correct in the fact that you specifically stated at our last committee meeting one item of board policy that you wish to bring forth at this next meeting, and in fact, you extrapolated that to bring about 3 separate board policies, one of which, this one, being totally unique and different from what you had suggested at a prior board meeting. So if you wish to somewhat influence the membership of what took place, let's be complete in what was said. And what you had asked at the prior executive committee meeting was to have a board policy that restated a government code section 1099. That's what you sought, that's what you expressed, and yet you never brought up the discussion of how to place items on the agenda. This is unique. It was written by you. It was not presented to me as the chair, was not shared with me until it was a part of our packet, and it brings about the exact point of why it's very distracting to have any member at any point in time direct our staff to write items and resolutions to place upon our agenda without any vetting whatsoever through the hierarchy or any of the processes of the board. So I think this point makes it very clear the challenge of just opening up our agenda to any idea anyone has on a whim. Yes, Ms. Schenk.
You're very persuasive, Mr. Chair. So this is what I'd like to propose, that I'll withdraw my second, and that we work together on coming up with the wording that is, I think, the intent of Judge Kopp, as well as the other board members, that just basically clarifies and codifies what is the practice of this board, and so that it'll be there for future boards. If
very
that's
good.
Okay.
Therefore, this item, there's a motion. Is there a second on the item? Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. Mr. Crane. Yes. That means others have to push their button to unrequest.
I see.
That allows people to come in.
So let me ask a question about the way things get on agendas right now. So, for example, in this committee meeting, had Member Kopp raised this issue, and had there then been a second, but then the vote of the committee been to oppose his motion, which would have been odd, because there are only 3 people on the board, so I can see why he didn't get a second. But let's say that happened. Would you then still have been required to come to us at the board and say, Member Kopp would like to have this on the agenda? What do you all think?
I believe what would have occurred would have been there would have been direction by the committee, of which there was in this case. 2 members of the committee did not support these 3 amendments to the board policies, and 1 member of the committee did. But Mr. Kopp has every right to be able to, when the board is asked to concur in the committee's actions, that he could ask for that to be brought forward for further discussion by the full board. And that's where we are now.
So let me ask you then my follow-on question. If Member Kopp had wanted to get these items, any one of them, not all 3, 1, 2, or 3 of them, on the agenda for the board to consider, was he required to go through the committee, or is there another avenue by which he would have been able to ask all of us, or you, if it could be on the agenda?
Well, within the purview of the Executive and Administrative Committee are the board policies and procedures. And Mr. Kopp asked at the prior meeting of the Executive Committee for 1 modification to our board policy to be agendized for discussion at the subsequent meeting. And that's really what created the opening then to have more than 1 board policy and procedure presented to the committee.
But did he have to go through the committee? What I'm asking is...
Well, he chose to. So
did he have to? In other words, so let's say he never even talked to the committee, but Member Kopp wanted to have this in front of us.
And I think that is a point of clarity that we have operated under the sense that the chair and the executive staff place items on the committee or on the agenda. Chairs of committees place items on those specific committees' agendas. And in other cases, board members bring up at board meetings, or committee members bring up at committee meetings other items they wish to have on the agendas. Is there an articulated board policy? No, and I think that is what really creates the potential for this discussion.
Because so now that I have the answers to those questions, I want to know when board members want to have an item on the agenda and that it didn't make the agenda. I don't. So I guess it's a middle ground. I don't think every board member should be in a position to put everything on there. We have, 9 board members? So just think of the math. of what we could end up with these agendas. But I do want to know when someone wants to put something on the agenda. And I want, as a board member, to know that that's been rejected or we have a discussion about whether or not it should be on the agenda. So if that's what I want, how would we do that?
Well, I think what Ms. Schenk has been stating is pretty much that way, to work to craft a policy by which people publicly present an issue to be brought forward to be agendized for a future meeting. And that's a presentation of the board or presentation of the committee. You'd say, this is an issue I'd like to have discussed.
Maybe I can
Yes,
shorten
Mr.
this.
Katz.
Mr. Chair, don't we sort of do that already by the, because each committee gives a report, David, and I think each committee gives a report about what was taken up and action was taken or not taken. Any board member at that point has the ability to move any item from that committee to come before the full board. Even if it was defeated in committee, a board member can do that. So I think we have that provision.
But he's suggesting a unique item, an item that may not be agendized for a committee meeting. How
That
does
wasn't in a committee.
Brand-new
Got it. Okay.
concept be
Got it.
brought forward, and that usually is done when, at a board meeting, during members' comments, they say, I would like this item to be put on the agenda. I believe I remember when Mr. Dearden did it, dealing with the education initiatives. I remember Ms. Schenk did that in dealing with the risk management committee and assessment. So it has been done, and that's maybe we need to articulate a policy that presents that opportunity more clearly.
Mr. Chairman, let me shorten it and truncate it by moving to continue this for 1 month, and I can discuss with Mr. Crane and Ms. Schenk and other interested board members.
And I'll be glad to participate in that discussion, too. Yes. If there's no objection, we'll continue this item to our next monthly meeting. Mr. Kopp, you have more to say?
All right. The next two emanate from the implications of Government Code Section 1099. Number 2 states that no authority board member who holds another public office incompatible with authority board membership may participate in board or committee discussion or action that falls within the jurisdiction or reasonably could affect an interest of the other public office. This does not collide with Section 1099. In fact, it is consistent with and compatible with the policy behind Government Code Section 99, and the item contains an analysis by the staff of the law concerning incompatible offices, and I would move adoption of this as a policy of the authority.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
May I
Mr.
ask a
Dearden.
question?
Yes.
I think the law is clear on the matter. It's a California statute, and it's clear. Why would you need to say it again? The AG's office has already communicated to us on the subject.
I will
Excuse me, Mr. Kopp, let Mr. Dearden speak.
Well, that's a question of you as chair of the committee that debated the issue, I guess, and of Quentin. Why do we need to say it if it's already very clearly declared in California law?
Well, certainly that is the question at hand, why Mr. Kopp chooses to pick this element of the government code or the Political Reform Act or others that we are all bound to live by, and feels that it's important to put as a part of our board policies state law, which we are bound to live by. There is a tremendous amount of state law that any board must operate under, and this is just but one of them, and Mr. Kopp feels it's important to put it in the board policies. I don't believe that's necessary, and I agree with your point that you're making through your question.
Well, the reason why I made the point is nothing to do with this issue. It's to do with our policies. If we begin restating all of the aspects of California code that relate to our board in our policies, that policies are going to look like the telephone book.
Or they're going to look like those three binders, I think.
And I don't think that's to our advantage.
Oh. Yes, Mr. Kopp, you wish to respond to that?
This is not a restatement of Section 1099, Mr. Dearden. As I said, this emanates from Section 1099. Section 1099 has a different remedy. This is a policy which articulates a different policy and a different rule by prohibiting participation or action either in a committee or at the board by any member who holds another public office incompatible with authority board membership. It's an effort to insulate this authority against legal vulnerability.
Mr. Kopp moves this edition of the board policy. Any member of the board second that? I second. Okay. Mr. Crane seconds. Any further discussion on it? Yes, sir, Mr. Crane.
So let me ask a question of Member Kopp or the AG's office. What is the remedy under Section 10? What was the other section you made a reference to that the chairman is saying this is already, and Member Darradon is saying that this is already covered by state law? What is the remedy there, and how does that differ from the remedy that Member Kopp is proposing here?
Mr. Spanos.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Crane, the remedy under Section 1099 deals with a person, a public official who has one office who then assumes another office. If that second office and the first office are incompatible, then the remedy is that pursuant to the law, that person is deemed to have forfeited the first office at the time he assumes the second office. That's the remedy. He or she is not prevented from participating in matters. Well, let me back up. If that person continues to serve in that first office as well as serves in the later office, he or she is not prevented from taking part in discussions or actions in that second position that affect the first position or could affect it. So the law doesn't address that situation. As I understand this proposed policy, it does address that situation. It would say that if you hold another office that is incompatible, when you're on this board, maybe you're not required to forfeit this position, but you are required to refrain from participating in actions or discussions that basically raise what you could call an institutional conflict of interest because of your other position.
But isn't it true, Mr. Spanos, that the use of the words that are a part of this, if the Attorney General's office argues and it's declared in court that someone serves in two incompatible offices, if you follow through the process and if it is deemed that two offices are and so forth incompatible, the remedy is a forfeiture of the first office, correct?
You're talking about Section 1099.
Yes, I am under the word incompatible because this board policy references a word incompatible, and the use of incompatible offices in state law is defined very specifically, correct?
It's not defined specifically. It is defined in Section 1099, which is the codification of common law.
Exactly.
So, yes, the remedy, this is the distinction that I was trying to draw for Mr. Crane's benefit.
But just follow through the process. Under 1099, if offices are deemed to be incompatible, therefore, the first office is an individual must be removed from that first office, correct?
No. No. The offices can be incompatible and the person can continue to serve in that office, but that's deemed to be an intrusion into that first office. And the remedy is triggered by a request for leave to file a suit in quo warranto. That's explained in the analysis.
Well, but that's what I was trying to...
But it doesn't prevent that person who is legally intruding on the first office from participating in any action taken in the context of the second office. The proposal addresses that other situation. I think that's the distinction between the Section 1099 and its remedy on the one hand and this proposal on the other.
Yes, Mr. Crane.
Thank you for that, George. This strikes me as just common sense. I mean, I have found one of the things that has stunned me more about state government in the last 7 years is that somehow people are able to engage in discussions. I found this particularly to be the case when I was on the CAHSRA board. People can engage in discussions about things and even vote on them when, in that case, they were personally benefiting. They would get campaign contributions from people who were, had business in front of CAHSRAs. This whole notion that exists that, I mean, I don't even know in the private sector, if I was on the board of a private company and the board was having a discussion about entering into an agreement with a supplier that, happened to give me gifts or that might benefit me somehow, I would recuse myself from that. That's just common sense. So it seems to me that this proposal is just ensuring that we engage in commonsensical actions. None of us should engage in discussions or vote on things where we can benefit or benefit some other office that we may have. Strikes me as common sense.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Dearden.
David's logic is irrefutable. I guess the issue is definition of incompatible office,
Exactly.
which is a real bag of mush,
Right.
as far as I can read in the material so far. And not only in terms of the definition of the office, but also the timing. Now, if you're on a committee and you're talking about general policy, let's put up a straw person just for the sake of discussion. Let's say one of us is on a city council where we're going to have a station or something like that. And we're not talking about anything to do with that city. We're talking about an environmental document that might go along that corridor, but nothing to do with the city in terms of specifics. Wouldn't this policy disqualify that person from doing anything? Not just things to do with the downtown city council activities, but anything with that committee. And that's not right. And that's not, it doesn't relate to the logic of your comment either, David, which I agree with. I think we've all, from time to time, found ourselves in conflict and declared that and disqualified ourselves from debating the issue. And that's appropriate. But it doesn't disqualify you from serving on the committee forever, or the board forever.
Mr. Katz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that, a number of people have expressed the, their point of view, and I guess the thing that I find most troubling about that is the fact that this commission has, to a large extent, been isolated and set aside from the public in a lot of ways. And I think that a lot of the problems we have today statewide come from the previous leadership of this board's actions that isolated communities. There's a reason why the Gateway Cities COG in Los Angeles feels like they've been ignored for 4 years. There's a reason why folks up and down the state feel that they've been ignored for 4 years. And part of that is the fact that this was treated as something that should be put up on a pedestal and not interact with local government and local issues. Our constituents are local government and local issues. The people who are going to make decisions about this train are all local folks in various jurisdictions around this state. And if this train is going to be successful, we need their support. One of the things that's happened, because you have people now on this commission that have ties to local government, are MOUs and a variety of working relationships that didn't exist 2 years ago that have tried to move this train forward. It also shows to me sort of a fundamental misunderstanding of the federal application and how this thing's supposed to function. If you think about incompatible almost by definition, you're talking about things that work at cross purposes from each other. If you look at the R requirements for independent utility of anything we build, You cannot have independent utility in the case that high-speed rail does not happen, and we don't want to wind up with Sarah Palin's bridge to nowhere. It requires a cooperative effort between the local entities and high-speed rail. All of these benefit. In fact, I've tried, since this was first raised, or at least I read about it being raised, I was never directly contacted, but when I first read about it, I tried to put my mind around what decision somebody in the future might make in a local government office, Transportation Commission in particular, since that's what we're talking about, and high-speed rail that was in contradiction, because unless the locals and the high-speed rail work out joint working agreements, this train ain't going nowhere.
Yes, Mr. Dearden.
Here I go with this logic thing again, but if we followed this stricture, pretty soon the only people that could serve on this board would be retired people. You wouldn't have people that were heavily involved in the subject matter that we would like expertise on, able to serve on the board. And that would be a sad situation. You'd only have old fogies like me, who might have had some experience in the past, but don't have any background of current relationship with the communities that we're trying to serve.
Yes, Mr. Crane.
Well, then I must be reading this wrong, because the language says no authority board member who, this is on number 2 now, who holds another public office, Rod, incompatible, which doesn't limit the world to just to old retired fogies. There are lots of private citizens who don't hold public offices. With authority board membership may participate in board or committee discussion or action. Doesn't say they can't serve. That falls within the jurisdiction or reasonably could affect an interest of the other office. So I guess what we need is someone to tell me how strictly we can construe this. Because all I want, and what all of us should want on something which is the largest public works program in the country, financed very significantly by taxpayers and federal taxpayers and others, is a system that is a process that everybody can have complete confidence in, that people are doing things for the right reason. So I don't want to get us in a situation where we are stuck with just old retired fogies on the board who know nothing about it. I want to have young fogies who know what they're doing on the board. But I don't want them to be able to influence things that might also benefit them somewhere else. We all have to have the right incentive here.
Yeah, the question is benefit them. I will step forward as one that says I am the target of this point. That there has been discussion as to serving as mayor, an elected member of the mayor of my city, then appointed by this governor to serve on the High-Speed Rail Authority. Serving to build a statewide system that has no unique benefits to my city that are different than many of the other cities that will be benefited along the way. Is that incompatible, serving in that capacity? That's an open question. But you say no. Others may say yes. But what is left in law under 1090 to define if it is incompatible is what's articulated by the Attorney General's office. Somehow they were presented with this resolution, by the way, by Mr. Kopp, not to the chair, but directly to the Attorney General so they could craft this nice analysis. And in fact, it says there is a process by which incompatible offices can be determined in this state. And there's a remedy for that. Live by that. And if there's incompatible offices, live by that. Don't create a new rubric, a brand new one, that's different than the state law, different than the common law that was codified into state law a couple years ago, and somehow state here that who is the determinant of another public office that's incompatible? Who determines that if it's in our board policies and procedures? We're using the words that are in Government Code 1090. Therefore, there's a procedure to determine if there is a conflict or an incompatible office. Live by that procedure. If people wish to follow that process, follow that process. But in fact, here we're creating a new layer within our own organization that says, oh, we want to allow or put ourselves in even greater jeopardy or question as to is that based upon an incompatible action. And I think what Mr. Deardon's pointing out is going into the Deardon station, is that incompatible with a public position that Mr. Deardon may have held in some other...
I hadn't thought about that, but it's a good point.
Serving on the Orange County Transportation Authority as I do, is that incompatible with serving as mayor of Anaheim? Well, in fact, law says that they're not incompatible. Serving on a Metrolink board and the Orange County Transportation Authority, is that incompatible? Those issues are left to other places in the law to determine, not left to elements within this board to be battering around and saying which decisions, which members of this board can participate in and which they can't. So I think this was set up to stir the pot on this board, not to address what is the law and is presently the law that oversees the issues of incompatible offices.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Schenk.
I would hope that you don't really believe that it's to stir a pot. I mean, that's, we've all been operating under some reasonable goodwill amongst one another. I have a couple of questions. I don't know that I'm prepared to vote on this today because it does bring up layers of questions, and it is important and certainly valuable to have the discussion. The issue of incompatible office is a term of art in the law that speaks to public office holders. So my question one is, under the law today, George, could any member come to the Attorney General directly or through the Executive Director or even through the Chair and have the question brought to the Attorney General for determination about incompatibility?
As I understand it, let me point out that we're speaking now of the Attorney General, not as your legal counsel,
right,
but as the Attorney General.
Right, because there's another section, right, that makes this determination, not you.
Yes. The Attorney General's opinion unit's position is that, well, first of all, the law, and I think it's cited in here in the analysis, actually it's cited in the analysis to proposed policy amendment number 3, Government Code Section 12159, that says that the Attorney General shall render an opinion in writing to any state agency. I left out through ellipses some of the other enumerations, but it includes county council.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I really want to be clear. Is that the analysis about the proposed amendment or the law as it is today? I'm interested in the law as it is today.
That's the law as it is today, that the Attorney General will render an opinion on request by, and then the code section 12159 of the Government Code enumerates the public officials who can request opinions from the Attorney General. In that enumeration is a reference to state agencies. Now, you are a state agency, but you are governed by a multi-member board, which means that you act collectively. An individual member of the board is not the authority. So consequently, the Attorney General, and I think this was the point made in the letter from the Attorney General's office, is saying if we get a proper request, i.e. a request that is on behalf of the board, then we will respond to that. So an individual member of a multi-member board does not have the authority to trigger the Attorney General's responsibilities under Section 12159.
So that would have to be, excuse me, but I'd like to sort of follow this through. Would that take a majority vote of this board then to act as the agency? And would that require the recusal of the person in question?
Well, the answer to the first question is yes, because you generally act by majority vote so long as you have a quorum present and the matters on the agenda and so forth. As far as the recusal, that's kind of a catch-22 situation because you don't know the answer to the question until after it's been answered.
Well, but presumably the individual is identified who's the subject of the motion. So, okay, the second part of my concern here is setting aside public officials, and getting back to what David had said earlier, it is very important that any one of us, whether in public office, another public office or not act incompatibly, in other words, to have a conflict of interest of any kind. So I would be more comfortable if we were looking at something that talked about someone who holds another position, whether in the private sector or the public sector, that is incompatible with an issue before us. So, again, would the attorney, if we did something like that, in your opinion right now, and I won't hold you to it, but just to get your thinking, would the Attorney General's Office Division of Opinions be the right entity to which we would present that kind of an issue?
Well, I believe, Member Schenck, you're referring to financial conflicts of interest, as distinct from, let's say, an institutional conflict of interest.
Well, it could be, right now I can't think of the example, but I serve on the board of Sempra Energy, member of the board of directors. I'm very comfortable with recusal as a board member for matters that come up in which I might have any kind of an interest, even one of appearance. There might be down the line some issue involving high-speed rail in San Diego buying energy from Sempra, just to come up with a hypothetical. Who would determine if someone else said, I think that's an incompatible position?
Well, it's not an issue. What you're raising, Member Schenck, is really an issue involving financial conflicts of interest and the legal requirement that you disqualify yourself if you have an interest in the decision that's being considered. It's not a question of incompatibility. It's a question of a conflict of interest, which is set forth in your conflict of interest code, in the Political Reform Act, and in the regulations adopted by the Fair Political Practices Commission. Now, in terms of whom would you ask, one of the services we provide as in-house counsel is guidance and assistance in helping the member resolve those kinds of disqualification issues, because the law does require you to disqualify yourself from a decision in which you have a financial interest or a material financial interest. You can also request advice in terms of financial conflicts of interest from the Fair Political Practices Commission.
Well, excuse me, George, in the interest of time, I don't necessarily agree that it's only financial conflict of interest. I think common sense, we distill it down. If there are incompatible positions, whether they're financial or in the best interest of our community that we serve or whatever, that we do need to take a look at it. I'm just not sure today that this particular proposal addresses my own concern on that, but it's one that I do believe, thanks, Mr. Chairman, that we ought to continue some discussion on, but we're running out of time, so I don't want to belabor it right now.
Any other comments on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kopp.
I resent your imputation that I propose this policy to stir the pot. I'll add two other facts to the discussion. Incompatibility of office has been a part of California common law for decades. At least 70 years ago, the California Supreme Court defined it. Secondly, if the legislature, which codified that common law in 2005 with Section 1099, believes it is beneficial public policy to exempt certain offices and certain office holders of those offices from such historical rule of law, it does so. It does so, for example, with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, where county supervisors, city council members are specifically authorized to serve. It does so with the Orange County Transportation Authority, where the mayor of the city of Anaheim and other office holders are authorized to serve. It does so with the Los Angeles Metropolitan Transportation Authority. And it could, if it wished to do it with this commission. It has not done it with this commission. And this commission's actions are vulnerable. You cannot disregard it. You cannot deny it. It is common sense. As the discussion notes, the authority cannot change the provisions of 1099. This policy is designed and is consistent with those provisions. And again, Mr. Crane uses the word ensure, and that's an appropriate word. Ensure us against vulnerability. And I'd ask for a call.
Very good. There's a motion before us and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll? Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Crane.
I'd like to have a little bit more discussion.
Okay.
So I want to ask a question here of Member Kopp. If this rule went into effect now, and the legislature did not provide the exemptions you just described, that the OCTA has, et cetera, who from this board would have to leave? Who from this board would have to depart? Let me ask you a question. Would anybody from this board, in your opinion, have to depart the board?
It's not my opinion. It's opinion of Legislative Council of California that a couple members would fall within that category. But this policy's effect would be such members would simply not participate in discussion or vote on any item which is within the jurisdiction or affects the interest of the other public office.
Mr. Chairman, may I continue?
Yes, Mr. Crane.
So before we vote on such a momentous thing, and we don't know enough. We don't know what the consequences. I've just heard then from you something very different than what Member Diridon has said, and what I believe some other people believe, which is that we would actually have to have people depart the board. Or depart their other position. That's right. So I want to know what the consequences are, because what I want is I want that common sense outcome. I want to draw this narrowly so that it works, but it's not a sledgehammer. We need good people on this board, and I trust them to do the right thing, but I don't want them to be able to deliberate on things where there is a direct conflict. So we need to understand what the real consequences would be from this thing, and if we're going to vote on it now without knowing the consequences, I will withdraw my second. What I would rather do is understand this fully. And if it doesn't do what we want it to do, draw it away. You know, I'm struck by the fact that just to go back to the pension boards, they're governed by state law, but they also have their own rules, and they also have some federal rules that apply to them. So it's not unusual for there to be a state law which governs these activities and for us to design our own rule, which would give us the comfort we want without draconian consequences. So unless we're prepared for someone to tell us exactly what the consequences would be, for example, would the chairman have to give up his mayor position in Anaheim in order to stay on our board, or would he have to depart our board? That's a real problem for me, because we need good people to get this done, and we need him. I want to know that. But on the other hand, if we're going to be discussing the financing or a segment that involves Anaheim, then this board, then if I was him, I would recuse myself from that discussion. That's the kind of outcome that I want.
Well, that's very good. I actually believe there was some new information I learned, too, and that was the discussion that Mr. Kopp had, that he believes there's a ledge counsel opinion that speaks to this.
Why was lead counsel have any impact on us, our attorneys, the AG?
No, thank you, Mr. Dearden. I guess that makes my point, Mr. Crane, that therefore this type of board policy that's different than state law and using some different definitions possibly from state law and doesn't use the same apparatus by which state law is established and operates under 1099 basically could set us up that someone gets a legal opinion that says someone, be a judge who presently is a retired judge that serves on various cases in the state, that could be an incompatible office too. I mean, those, we don't know, and it's not going after those. You could craft a legal opinion possibly that does target members of the board. Or we could set ourselves up to say everyone who disagrees with elements of this board, figure out ways to get a legal opinion to start taking off various members of the board on various decisions. I think there is a state law that oversees this, and I'm content to live within it and not to create a new rubric for this board membership to have to operate under. Yes, Mr. Crane.
You know, they have a rule, for example, going back to the pension funds, and now the SEC has finally applied it to pension funds. It's long been the rule, for example, with with the sale of muni bonds, that, you know, while the members of our pension boards in California are governed by the equivalent of 1090 and other provisions in terms of the office they can have and that sort of thing, they are separately covered by a rule soon by the SEC, for example, that anybody who makes a contribution to them or gives a gift to them cannot do business with the state pension board for 2 years, let's say. So it seems to me what we need here is to have a rule. This is not like an either or. It's not binary. It's not like we're either covered by 1090 and we make it explicit with respect to us. It's more that we're covered by 1090. That's a state law. But we want to make explicit that we want to make sure we recuse ourselves from situations that we shouldn't be involved in. So my suggestion would be that we craft the rule that works. I'd be happy to work on that with somebody, to craft the rule that works.
And maybe having that discussion is a proper termination of this discussion. I would want to make sure we're very cautious, for example, if someone from that sat on Caltrain, so sat on this board as well, to say that there should be that nothing they do in terms of giving a decision, direction, or participation on this board, that anything that this board may do dealing with Caltrain, they should be exempt from discussion. I actually believe that person brings the most expertise to us if they were a Caltrain board member. Don't you?
It depends on if there's a financial discussion taking place and the state can be subsidizing Caltrain.
That's fine. But what about an operational discussion?
The operational, I'd love it.
Well, but
Financially, I wouldn't.
well, but David, you've dissected this even further, that it all depends on if we provide funding to Caltrain. Then you wouldn't feel comfortable, but making sure they operate compatible, would that be a worthy opportunity? I mean, you certainly wouldn't want to tell them they should not participate in that discussion, right?
Yeah, but is the alternative that there is no recusal?
I believe we're all public figures, though, sitting on this board, and people know who we are and where we come from, and exactly when we sit on other public boards, we sit on other public boards, and they're public. Therefore, it's not that those questions can be drawn, but the point is to lose or disregard expertise, I think, is a question I would have. I mean, I'm soon sunsetting my service in my city, so that issue is soon not even going to be one I consider, but I certainly know the expertise I gained in serving there was very valuable. All right, so what's the board's interest in this? There's a motion before us on that. Is there a substitute
I'd ask
motion?
that the maker and the seconder allow the matter to be carried over and that David and Lynn have a look at the material, see if they can draft something that would divide the baby in effect. What you're really talking about doing, David, is applying the concepts of the fiscal conflict to jurisdictional conflicts. And I'm not sure you can do it based on the current jurisdictional conflict code that says if you identify that as a conflict, you lose your original office. but I'd be happy to let you have a whack at it and bring it back.
All right, is that a motion, Mr. Dearden, to direct board policy
If the maker and the seconder will just withdraw their
I'm not
maker.
withdrawing the motion.
Then I move that we table the matter for a month and let David and Lynn, 2 months, and let David and Lynn have, well, it might take that long.
I want to work with Quentin, too.
Well, it's up to you to work with whomever you like, and that you bring it back within the next 2 months for board consideration.
So, Mr. Dearden...
And through the executive committee.
Mr. Dearden moves to table this item for the purposes of, moves to table amendment number 2 and 3 for purposes of drafting language that would be acceptable.
Sorry. Second.
Second by Mr. Crane.
It specifically included the 2 individuals who indicated they wanted it.
Right.
Although the chair can assign that if you like.
Yes, Mr. Cobb.
I'm pleased to inform you, Mr. Chairman, I do not sit as a judge by assignment. And secondly, I do not withdraw the motion because time is an imperative. This board meets every month and acts every month and discusses every month.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Mr. Dearden makes a substitute motion that is before us, seconded by Mr. Crane.
It's actually a motion to table. It's
fine. If you wish to make a motion to table takes precedent over everything else. So motion to table the item by Mr. Dearden, seconded by Mr. Crane. Will the clerk please call a roll? Aye.
Mr. Crane? Aye. Mr. Dearden?
Aye.
Ms. Gores?
Aye.
Mr. Katz?
Aye.
Mr. Cobb?
No.
Ms. Shane?
Very good. So that
Mr. Chairman,
properly dispenses with all the items at the executive committee. Yes,
I'm not sure we all need to do this, but since Quentin did, I'd like to note for the record that I have no other offices and I have no financial interests with anybody. I wish I had some financial interests, but retired politicians don't have any, and so I have no conflict.
Thank you. It's very nice of you to share that with all of us. Next item on our agenda is item number 4, Operations Committee report. Mr. Dearden, I know you were the only member at the Operations Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I can report to you that the results of the Operations Committee are that we are on schedule, as identified with each one of the corridor elements, and that that is presented in detail in the table. It looks like this in our binder, and that's easily understood. I would like to thank the engineering staff, Tony and Mark, for coming up with this much more understandable presentation format than in the past, and that therefore the Operations Committee has nothing further to report to you.
Very good. I think we can unanimously accept that report. So if there's no objection to that, we will, even though you weren't constituted as a full committee. Next item before us is item number 8. Mr. Van Ark, would you prepare this item for us?
Mr. Chairman, Carrie Bowen will in fact introduce the item. It's the Fresno to Bakersfield Supplemental Alternatives Analysis. So, Carrie, if you can present, please.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. We're going to be discussing the supplemental report to the Fresno to Bakersfield section, and Tom Tracy from PB will be doing the presentation. You had asked us to go back and look at possible options through Hanford, and we're here to report on that.
Thank you, Carrie. Good morning, Board. Happy to be here again. I want to share with you just a brief reminder of the Fresno to Bakersfield project, where we left off when we were here last in June to talk with you, and to let you just a brief description of the project. From Fresno to Bakersfield, about 119 miles long. We had 3 alternatives alignments in Fresno that we are moving forward into the EIR-EIS from when we met with you in June. We have an alignment down primarily the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway through the valley from Fresno to Bakersfield with a east bypass, if you will, of Hanford, a design option in and around Corcoran, design options at Allensworth, and design options at Shafter and Wasco, and then 2 alignments in Bakersfield. The project has 3 stations, one in downtown Fresno, one in downtown Bakersfield, and then a potential station to serve the Tulare and Kings County region. And during the course of this project over the last several years, we've done quite a bit of outreach. We've had over 360 meetings and briefings with in the area. We had 89 different meetings and briefings just this year, and we're working closely with the 2 railroads. We've spent a lot of time with BNSF on the alignment from Fresno to Bakersfield, and the authority is now in discussions to look at some of the areas that we have to work through downtown Fresno. So the reason we're here to give you to address this supplemental alternatives analysis is out of the outreach that we received on the project, we had some requests from the agricultural community and requests from Kings County to look again at our alignment near Hanford. It has, as we had left it last June, it is an alignment that leaves the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway and diverts east around Hanford, and we were asked by you to go back and look at some things that we could do to try and reduce some of the agricultural impacts. So let me zero in a little bit on the Kings County area. Here's the BNSF Railway. It goes right through this downtown Hanford, but the alignment that we moved forward into EIS when we were here in June diverts around the east side of Hanford. It's called Alternative C1, and then you'll see also on this little map the 2 design options at Corcoran. So what we went and looked at is, could we continue the alignment and follow closely with the BNSF Railway through Hanford? And that's this blue line that just come up. So we ended up with 2 options, and as you can maybe see from this map, is we aren't able to stay strictly along the BNSF Railway right-of-way, particularly when we come south out of Layton. Our alignment to achieve the 220 mile per hour speed, we can't stay at the same geometry that BNSF has, and then there's a couple other points in downtown Hanford and as it exits downtown Hanford that we can't stay with that alignment. So zooming in a little bit on Hanford itself, again, here's the BNSF Railway, how it goes through town. It has a little kink there in downtown, and the 2 options that we have, one we call H1 locates at the station area primarily downtown. It's that blue rectangle, if you will, that's on your graphic there. And then option H2 through town follows a little bit closer to the BNSF right-of-way, but in order for us to get a station within the town area on that option, it would have to be located south of town. Now, all of these options, because of the congestion of the community, and in order to get our alignment by the San Joaquin Valley Railroad, get by a spur from the BNSF line, and to get over Highway Route 198, we would have to be elevated all the way through Hanford. So we took this work out back to the community. We met again with the agricultural community, with the Kern County and Tulare County, what we call the technical working group, and with the city of Hanford, and got their comments about this. And before I get into that, let me just show you some of the things that we looked at as we were evaluating the different options. So certainly, because of the main reason we went out to explore it, we looked at to see if we could reduce agricultural impact. And certainly the options through town do reduce the impact from 630 acres of impact on the bypass or the east of Hanford alternative to 285. But the through-town options have significantly more impacts with residential displacement, business displacement in particular, the properties that would be displaced by that. The East Hanford bypass, or the alternative that we have been studying, really also provides us a better opportunity for regional connectivity to communities in Tulare County so that we could get access to serve that regional station better, and by potentially using the San Joaquin Valley Railroad, if that's done, or Highway 198. There's better access for constructability along the East bypass, and the cost would be quite a bit more. That's why there's a plus on the Hanford East bypass. It's a positive that it costs less. I should maybe switch those around. It costs less to build that than it would the through-town option. The through-town option, as I said, is through a congested area. It would all be elevated, an elevated station, and would be quite a bit more costly. So continue with our evaluation. As I said, we took this out back to the communities. The city of Hanford and Kings County have both opposed the through-town options and now the bypass, our east alignment. The agricultural community is also opposes all the alignments. Fortunately, Tulare County, TTAG, and the city of Visalia and all the communities in Tulare County continue to support the C1 alignment, or the alignment that's east of Hanford. And as I stated just recently, the bypass alignment provides better potential station location and better regional connectivity to the Kings-Tulare region. So with that, and I know this is brief, and I know that there's a lot more detail in your packet, but to get to what our recommendation is we want to continue following the alternative that we brought to you with the preliminary AA report in June, the alternative that goes around the east side of Hanford, but also look for opportunities to minimize agricultural impacts. And we can do that by lining up with some of the existing roadways, and we're doing that already. We also are recommending that we do not carry forward the options through Hanford because they will have substantial residential and business displacement. We could not find any major environmental benefit. They would reduce the connectivity for a potential regional station, and there is no community support for it. So the next steps for the Fresno to Bakersfield process is to hopefully have your action to accept these staff recommendations, that we will continue to meet with the stakeholders and the public on all of the alignments from Fresno to Bakersfield and continue to work with them on refining them, and then take that work into the environmental studies and the 15% design that we're currently working on. And then we would come back with the draft EAR-EIS in January and a final EAR-EIS in July of 2011. So that's it. Mr. Chair. Is there any questions?
That's it.
That's it for that, yeah.
Very good. Mr. Dearden.
I might have missed it in the video display, but I don't see it on the printed material as to where the station location is on the alternate C1.
Okay.
For the, it's on
C1.
198 and 198 and 43, right? 198 and 43, and it's a potential regional station, and that's the footprint, and that would connect eventually with the San Joaquin Cross Valley Rail.
Well, it doesn't show a station location on C1.
It doesn't in this graphic. At the beginning of the presentation, there is it shows a little dot there. I could go all the way back.
Well, it's okay. I've got it now. Roughly, it's where State Highway 198 crosses the blue line.
Yes, it's right. If you could see there where there's the San Joaquin Valley Railroad and Highway 198, and where the line is, it's in a little rectangle right there, right off of Highway 43. Of course, we don't have Highway 43.
You know, I can't see whether that's in Hanford or in the farmlands.
It is just outside of the city limits of Hanford.
It's in their sphere of influence, and it's the direction of their general plan, and it is not, the actual station is not in farmland. There's a rural residential neighborhood in the area, and kind of an industrial parcel, I think, kind of maybe business industrial on that other corner.
Well, it certainly is in variance with our policy of having stations in downtown centers as much as we can.
Right.
And I would think it would be growth-inducing that in a manner that could affect open space land. So I'd hope that you take that into consideration and work carefully with the people from the area. Maybe Mr. Martin from the trust wants to talk to you about it, and if you're thinking about doing that, I think the discussions we had with the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters at some time in the past, before the end of 2008, would come into question.
We have been working closely with the city, and at this point, they have chosen to oppose all alignments in their county and the city. It was previously their preferred placement for the station if they get one, because it's an optional station. So it's previously their preferred one, and we're also working very closely with the agricultural community, which is why we looked at a through-town option. It's the curves in that through-town option that created problems, and that's why the programmatic selected the BN route. Originally it was on the western side, but the city had asked us, and the COG had asked us to look on the eastern side.
Wasn't Hanford very determined to have a station location in Hanford at one time?
Visalia.
That was Visalia.
Visalia.
I'm sorry.
You're right. That's okay.
Very
and
good.
Visalia likes the location. If it can't be in Visalia, the connection from 198 to Visalia and the potential of the Cross Valley rail becoming a passenger rail is something that they were working on. And I think they're here today, too.
Very good. Any other comments from staff to our staff this time, from staff, from the board? Because we have plenty of public comments. And I'm going to ask the members of the public who wish to be heard on this item, you can't be bad and brief. And I would like you to limit your comments to 2 minutes each, if not quicker even. So may I invite Supervisor Perea back forward and Mayor Bob Link.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, just to reiterate an earlier comment with respect to the letter that Fresno County has sent reconfirming our support for the alignment as proposed and as being studied. And we did acknowledge at our last board meeting Manuel Cunha from the Nacy Farmer League, who came to speak to us about issues and concerns that they had with respect to the Hanford alignment. And we certainly understand, and our board has communicated that we want to work with folks to see if we can help people work things out. And I've had the opportunity to talk to Manuel, as well as our board, Mayor Link from Visalia and Councilman Ayers from Hanford. So we're going to be talking about putting together a regional meeting to see if we can't discuss some of these issues and make it mutually beneficial to all of us. And just like to compliment Carrie Bowen, too. Again, we can't thank her enough for all the work she does for us in the Valley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will make a quick aside. Last month, I had a very nice meeting with the mayor of Sacramento, and he is very supportive of high-speed rail and wants to encourage us to get to Phase 2, connecting into Sacramento as quickly as possible. So I just now realized the propaganda that they had generated to put on these screens to be behind us to show the new Sacramento downtown high-speed rail station, and I don't know if everybody noticed that, but it took me only 2.5 hours to figure that out. So that's what that's all about. All right, so Mayor Bob Link, following Mayor Link, Mike Almos.
Good morning, Chairman Pringle and members of the Commission, and I'd like to thank Mr. Van Ark for being in our area about 10 days ago and sharing with us some information that was very helpful to us as we continue to work on the high-speed rail. So again, thank you very much for spending your time with us. The City of Visalia and Tulare County and its cities have always supported high-speed rail for a number of years. We understand how important it is to California and to our region. Tulare and Kings County region is far more to now have a future station. Our region will have 1 million people by the year 2030. Tulare County by itself will have 1 million people by the year 2050. Tulare County is the number 2 county in the United States. Fresno County is number 1 for agriculture. Both our counties support high-speed rail. We believe agriculture and high-speed rail are compatible. To retain federal funding, we believe the Fresno to Bakersfield segment of high-speed rail needs to be moved forward. We urge the High-Speed Rail Authority to accept the alignment on the east side of Hanford with a station near 198 and Highway 43. We also urge High-Speed Rail Authority to continue to work with King County, the agriculture community, to resolve alignment issues in Kings County as much as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Mike Olmos and Ted Smalley.
Thank you, Chair Pringle. I'm Mike Olmos. I'm with the City of Visalia. However, I have been the point of contact for Tulare County and our region on the high-speed rail issue, and I report monthly to our Council of Cities, which is the 8 cities in Tulare County, along with reporting to our city managers meeting, which occurs monthly and includes the representation from the County of Tulare and from our COG. My reason for coming up here is to present resolutions that have been adopted in support of high-speed rail and in support of the east bypass and the potential station at Highway 198 and 43. So I want to leave here resolutions from the City of Porterville in support of the east bypass, the City of Dinuba, our own City of Visalia, the City of Woodlake, and the County of Tulare, all of which have passed resolutions in support of high-speed rail and the east bypass. Thank you. C1, correct.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Smalley and then Darrell Pyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ted Smalley, the Director of Tulare County Association of Governments. We are made up of the 8 cities in the county. I just want to make it clear our region supports high-speed rail. We have for many years. It's been in our regional transportation plan for many years to support high-speed rail, even long before the bond was passed. We have unanimous support at TCAG from all 8 cities and the county. We've taken multiple actions over multiple years to continually support high-speed rail, and we certainly believe the east side alignment serves our county as the best alternative in the region. As mentioned earlier, even with conservative estimates, we're looking at over 1 million people. We already are working with your staff. We have continued to look at planning, trying to, as the station is talked about, we've started doing some preliminary efforts looking at what could happen from day one. We already have an express loop transit service that immediately could serve the station in time. As was noted earlier, it's right next to where light rail could provide service. And we already have direct service up to the national park. So folks can get off at that station, be able to have transit service all the way to one of the nation's greatest national parks with never having to drive their car. So in summary, I would just like to thank the authority. I'd like to thank staff, especially Carrie as well, for the efforts, and we look forward to working with you and moving forward, hopefully with the east side alignment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pyle, followed by Bob Snoddy.
Mr. Chair, members of the authority, my name is Darrell Pyle. I'm the city manager for the city of Tulare. I'd like to thank Mr. Van Ark for his recent visit to Tulare. You're always welcome, as are all the members of the authority. On behalf of the City Council of the City of Tulare and the 60,000 residents who call Tulare home, we wish to extend our ongoing support for the high-speed rail project and the C1 proposed alignment between Bakersfield and Fresno. We believe that a high-speed rail stop in the region is mission critical to providing services to the 500,000 potential riders right now. We believe that everyone in Tulare and Kings County will benefit from the investment in that infrastructure project. We will continue to work with the authority and its staff to bring that leg of the project to fruition, and our City Council has also adopted a resolution in support of that C1 alignment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Snoddy, and then Mr. Steve Samuelian.
Thank you, Chairman Pringle and members of the authority. Ronald Brummett, our Executive Director from Kern COG, has mailed in a letter of support for both the station development policy and also the alternative analysis, the Bakersfield to Fresno alternative analysis, obviously. Also, we are good to, although the public meeting process has been completed by your staff, we will be starting the Kern County Fair September 22nd through October 3rd, and we will work closely with Ms. Bowen and also with Mr. Tracy to personalize your efforts in the latest documents and maps and procedures into the Kern County Fair, which will reach over 100,000 people countywide. So we just want to continue our support for both the station development policy and also for the alternative analysis report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuelian, and Mr. Tony Bourne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board member Steve Samuelian, California Consulting. The firm I own represents 23 cities across the state, 19 of which are in the San Joaquin Valley, as well as 2 COGs, Kern Council of Governments and Fresno COG, and they are very supportive of the C1 alignment. We want to commend your staff for doing a great job. They provided a thoughtful, very thorough, comprehensive approach which engaged the stakeholders of the community, many of which, as I mentioned, are our clients. So we're grateful to Carrie and everybody at the high-speed rail who really had an engaging process with stakeholders and reached out to try to build consensus. Kern Council of Governments, as I mentioned, which is one of our clients, all of the cities in Kern County as well as Kern County itself, Fresno COG, and I know their executive director is going to speak in a minute. They're one of our clients, all 15 cities in Fresno County plus the county, as well as a number of other organizations support your proposed and staff recommended C1 alignment. So I want to urge you to adopt that, and thank you for your consideration and for a very thorough and thoughtful staff recommendation that we believe is inclusive and is in the best interest of the San Joaquin Valley, cities, the counties, the COGs, and the stakeholders in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tony Boren, and then Alan Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tony Bourne, Executive Director, Fresno COG. I'm going to submit a letter summarizing these thoughts, so I'll be very brief in the interest of time. As you've heard from Steve and others, we have, Fresno COG has a long history of supporting the high-speed rail project. We're very proud of the project. We think there's a lot of potential there for the state and the valley. We have a long history of working with authority staff, consultants, trying to work together and put together a project that's going to work for everyone. We feel very strongly that the Bakersfield to Fresno segment is logically the first opportunity to put to use our ARA funds, given the nature of that segment. It's going to offer the opportunity for ease of construction, cost of construction. It'll probably be the first opportunity to develop the system to allow it to operate at design capacity and test it at design capacity. So we're excited about it, and we just want to convey to you that we're here to work with you, and we look forward to a healthy working relationship.
Thank you very much, and thanks for talking so fast. Alan Crowder, and then Mr. Ed Graveline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Alan Crowder, representing the County of Kern and the Kern County Board of Supervisors. The board strongly supports the BNSF alignment, and we strongly support staff's recommendation to the authority regarding that alignment in the San Joaquin Valley, as does the Kern Transportation Foundation, who has authorized me to also deliver a letter. They are a private nonprofit organization dedicated to improving transportation infrastructure in Kern County, as well as the city of Wasco. So I'm just enter these for the record. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Mr. Ed Graveline, then Katie Stevens.
Ed Graveline, working with the City of Fresno. Chairman Pringle, board, good to be here. Just wanted to reiterate our support as a city support for the alignment proposed by the authority that Carrie's putting forth. Also want to thank Carrie for all the work she's done, and just everybody else thanking her. It's been an awesome thing to work with her and to see how she's worked with the other communities and the constituencies in and around Fresno. Let me also just say personally, in one of my other lives, I'm a farmer, And so I understand the concerns of the farming community. I'm a member of the Fresno County Farm Bureau, understand their concerns, but I think those concerns are overridden by the incredible potential that the advent of high-speed rail brings to Fresno County and the larger community. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Ed. Katie Stevens, followed by Holly King. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Katie Stevens here on behalf of Mayor Ashley Swearingen from the City of Fresno, and she regrets she's unable to be here in person, so I wanted to share her comments in written form and submit it to the Commission for formal comment. She says, I regret that I'm unable to be at the Authority Board meeting, but I would like to extend my support for the Fresno to Bakersfield Supplemental Alternatives Analysis Report and its recommendations. Over the past year, the City of Fresno has worked closely with the Authority staff and its consultants on the various alignments through the area. We are interested in seeing momentum on the California High-Speed Rail project continue. With unemployment levels fluctuating between 16% and 18% countywide in recent months, we recognize what a positive impact this project will have on our communities by putting people back to work and priming our local economy. This project and the prospect of siting the heavy maintenance facility in Fresno County remain the city's highest priorities. Last January, when the federal government awarded California $2.25 billion in federal economic stimulus funding for the high-speed rail project, we were pleased that the Fresno to Bakersfield section was one of the 4 sections designated to receive funding. We also recognize that there are very aggressive timelines that need to be met in order to access the funding. The Board's approval of the recommendation will help keep the schedule moving forward. We are encouraged by the progress on the project to date, and we look forward to working with you and your staff to assist in the completion of the section. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Holly King, followed by Ms. Diana Peck. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Pringle and members of the board, thank you for having us here today. I represent the Wasco area growers, which we have signed on to a letter that will be read shortly by Carrie Carvajal, so I'm a little out of order. But I represent 85 farming entities in the Wasco area. I'd like to add some additional comments to that letter. The original intention and vision of high-speed rail, which was endorsed by the voters, was that the high-speed rail would be on existing corridors as much as possible, and that the environmental impacts would be limited. The proposed alignments that go through prime farmland create significant environmental damage and clearly are not on existing transport corridors. Existing corridors represent an existing constraint. Putting the high-speed rail through farmland creates an entirely new set of constraints. As discussed in our letter, there are numerous costs to the 85 farming operations that I represent. But I'd like to take that discussion to the next level, which is it's equally significant to the public. The cost of mitigating those losses, we're working on a model to quantify those, which include things like chopping off parcels, redesigning irrigation systems, lost revenue, and we are calculating, depending on the crop, that it's upwards of $100,000 per acre. So this is a significant cost to the public in terms of mitigating for that loss. In addition, I think it's more than 2,350 acres of farmland that could be lost because you need to take into account setbacks for human transit corridors and things like that. So I don't think it's just the acreage that the rail is built on. Additionally, the public, both at the state and federal level, would be losing a valuable resource. It's a resource in the San Joaquin Valley that produces, it's prime farmland, you can't replicate it, and it produces upwards of a third of what's consumed in fruits, nuts, and vegetables in the United States. So it is an irreplaceable resource.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Diana Peck and Mr. Manuel Cunha.
Thank you, Chairman Pringle and members of the board. My name is Diana Peck, and I'm the Executive Director of the Kings County Farm Bureau, and I want to thank you for allowing us to speak today. I, too, am represented, or our organization is represented on a letter that's going to be read to you shortly by the Executive Director from Merced County, Amanda Carvajal.
This better be a good letter. It has a lot of setup to it.
And I'm not going to speak really much about anything new with regard to how this does disfigure our farmland, the cost, impacts and things to our landowners. But what I do want to bring to your attention is the report by your regional directors and your regional representatives I just would like to make sure that you, it is imperative, I ask that you please make sure that the information that you are receiving is completely accurate. I do question just a couple of statements made in the previous presentation regarding the 360 meetings and briefings with our local, the people within our region, and also the 89 meetings in 2010. The agricultural community has been invited to exactly 4 meetings and briefings this calendar year. And so I feel like some of these statistics are not altogether accurate. The cost for the alignment, the C1 alignment, how are these calculations determined? Just as Holly just stated, what are the details of these cost determinations? Also, the number of acres impacted, how are those also arrived at? Finally, I would like to talk to you just about a personal issue, and Holly did touch on this when she spoke to you. What I want to ask from you is a shift in your, how you see agriculture. A lot of times we speak of the impacts to the growers and the producers and those dollars, but I want to ask you to consider the impacts to our society. I really get concerned because we as a society, we value advancements in medicine, we value innovations in technology, and we don't put enough of a value on our state's ability to produce 400 unique commodities that are supplied. That's 400 unique food, fiber, and floral commodities that are supplied to people within our state and our nation, also outside of our borders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Cunha and Mr. John Toss.
Mr. Chairman, Judge, very spirited discussions this morning on policies. I know I serve on the Federal Reserve Board, and our Board of Governors talks about conflicts, and they're quite unique. This morning, Mr. Van Ark, in June I asked you to come to Fresno. I asked you to meet with agriculture. I appreciate that you came a couple weeks ago and you met with the city councils and folks. I got a call that maybe we could meet with you in Hanford for about maybe 10, 15 minutes. I would ask you to come to Fresno, Merced even. Merced's fine because that's closer for you, with the agricultural leaders of our valley and our communities that are impacted by this rail. We support the high-speed rail, Mr. Chairman. We're not anti. But what I am anti is when you look at the amount of farmland that you are going to carve up in angles and parts, the cost is more than I will estimate. The total land will probably be 500,000 acres will be impacted. Now, let me come from the standpoint of banking. The bank appraisers will have to appraise every farm loan over because of the assessed values of what you're going to do to that farmland. That will open up every interest loan that our farmers have. Huge impact to our industry, and that has not ever been discussed with the banking industry. And let me tell you, our industry in the United States has $2.1 trillion in bank loans. We are the largest in the entire loan system. Farmers are in California. Okay? So I ask you, Mr. Van Ark, to please come to the San Joaquin Valley to meet with the agricultural industries, but also outside of our areas. We'll come here to meet with you and your staff, even the chairman and judge, definitely yourself. Because I think we need to show that the impact, we don't have problems working with Carrie and her staff. No way. But when you go through all the farmlands from across 152, north of 152, and then from Merced south to Bakersfield, the cities, if it wasn't for agriculture, no city in the San Joaquin Valley would be alive. We are the heart of this state and this industry and of these cities. I appreciate the city supporting everything, but not one city really got up and said, except for Henry Perea, that agriculture is important and we got to protect it. And I thank Supervisor Perea for that comment. I'm a little concerned of some of my other cities. It's fine to shove it on the farmland. We want to work with you and make it work, but let's don't destroy the food fiber that feeds this world. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. John Toss, followed by Mr. George Source.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. I come uniquely in that I am a farmer, and our family is going to be impacted directly with the train coming through east of Hanford. We farmed there for 100 years, and it's going to go through our properties in 6, 7 different places and right through my brother's home. It's going to destroy our way of life there. Everything is going to have to change for us. When we first started this, I asked Carrie Bowen, I says, Carrie, can we do anything? She says, of course you can. You go to the city of Hanford, get them to make a resolution against this, the county of Kings, which they did, the city did, the Farm Bureau did, and everything. And now today, nothing has changed. You folks are going to put it right through the heart of our farm. And we don't appreciate that. And we're not going to sit still on this either, believe me. If the city of Visalia wants it, more power to them. But don't put it through our area. You can go through I-5 or you can go through the 99 corridor. When this thing was crafted, Jim Costa helped craft this thing years ago, and it was to go down existing corridors. Would you please follow what you said you would do? I'm going to endorse Meg Whitman for the reason that she said, and that the state is broke, the federal government is broke, and we ought to put this thing on hold. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Soros and then Jason Segan.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you. I'm here wearing a few hats as well. I'm the owner of a dairy and farming operation in Hanford, and the track is going to go either through or near that facility. I'm also here on behalf of a number of agricultural clients that are very much interested in making sure that ultimately we have compatibility. High-speed rail, we get that. Agriculture gets that. Some sacrifices are going to have to be made. The problem we have, the bottom line problem, Ag is speaking to you. You are listening. We're all meeting, but we're not communicating. I saw that graph put up there by your staff. I lived there. The representations made in that graph, by all my knowledge of that area, are inaccurate. 630 acres impact on that area is laughable. It's absolutely laughable. And so what we want to do is drive home the point with you that we can be compatible. But this authority is engaged in a political nightmare with California agriculture at this point because of how you're going about this work. We're trying to drive home the point. We're not trying to ping-pong, Mr. Chairman. We get that. We have to be responsible citizens as well. There's a way to do this thing. I brought up 99 Highway recently. Congressman Costa has written a letter suggesting that. I was told, no, that was taken off the table in 2005. I got a notice about my dairy, 6 or 8 months ago, that were coming through. Now, I always thought that the corridors of the state were in play, but not coming through and making new corridors in California unless it was absolutely essential. Other than the chart that was put up there that says it's cheaper to come through farmland, I've heard nothing that suggests why you need to come through farmland. It's cheaper and some cities don't want it. My property is near a corridor. When I got the original notice, I realized that a part of my property would be taken. That's the price I paid by being close to a corridor. But I didn't realize until I got the actual maps that you're coming right through 2,000 head of cattle. I didn't buy into that when I bought that property. So I make the sacrifice, Mr. Chairman. If you come close, as long as you stay by the corridors, you're deviating from corridors. The only reason I can understand for that is that a train has to go a certain speed, and you made decisions in 2005 that we didn't even have a chance to participate in. This is becoming a real wreck in terms of the relationship between your authority and agriculture. I want to support what Manuel Cunha has asked for. We need a meeting, and we need it soon, so we can get to the bottom of these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Sagan and Amanda Carvajal.
Chairman and board members, thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning or afternoon. My name is Jason Segan from the Criscom Company. We represent the city of Corcoran. I'm here once again before you to express the city's opposition to the through-town alternative. It's our position that if it has to come our way, we'd like to support the east side of town bypass. Last month, I presented you guys with a resolution from the city council expressing that. We look forward to continuing to work with your staff and appreciate all of your dedication to our state, and hope to see this come to fruition with all parties happy.
Thank you very much. Ms. Carvajal and then Paul Saldana.
Well, I guess I'm the one you guys have been looking forward to. My name's Amanda Carvajal. I'm with Merced County Farm Bureau. We have our letter. You guys get to finally read it. So I come before you as a representative of several agriculture stakeholders from Merced to Kern County, representing over 25,000 farmers and ranchers in our area. We would like to address many of the concerns we have been repeatedly raising by each individual organization. Now we're doing it as a whole. Although I'm from Merced, I'm speaking on a Fresno to Bakersfield route. I'm submitting this letter for review for all sections of the route, from Merced all the way down, including from Phase 2, for anywhere that affects agriculture. Number one concern we have addressing there is the cost estimates do not take into accurate valuation of land. For example, a recently planted walnut orchard has a life expectancy and income revenues of 40 years. However, your estimates do not take this into account. Number two concern, I'm trying to abbreviate for you guys. Many of the proposed routes alternatives ignore property lines and diagonally cut parcels, rendering many of these parcels unfarmable. Your estimates of approximately 200 or 2,300 acres of farmland taken out of production are dramatically underestimated, and due to the route options veering off to many of these transportation corridors. The third concern, the irrigation system will be detrimentally affected, which many of the previous farmers' representatives have alluded to. Also, pollination, it will be dramatically decreased. Permanent crops such as almonds, which is very big in the Central Valley, it needs to be pollinated, and bees are extremely picky. And with having trains going through these areas, which a lot of these areas in Merced County specifically and Madera are almond orchards, these bees will not produce. They will not pollinate. Finally, we want to remind you that farmland is not replaceable. We cannot pick this land up and move it to another state, much like other businesses or companies can do. California loses approximately 100,000 acres per year, and we encourage you to continue to take impacts in the Central Valley to ag land extremely seriously. We have been consistent. We have been the one consistent economic engine in California through the generations, and we hope that you will continue to take us seriously in this matter against urban issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Saldana, and then Rich, you wish to be heard again? No? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the authority, I'm Paul Saldana with the Economic Development Corporation in Tulare County, and I'd first like to start off by thanking the CEO for coming down to the Partnership for the San Joaquin Valley meeting and addressing the board a couple weeks ago. We appreciate your time. We've been involved in this process for a number of years, as the authority knows, and we're at the point now where, a lot of alternatives have been evaluated. I think it's important to point out that the existing corridors have been evaluated. They were taken out for a variety of reasons, and we're here today because the process has brought us to this point, to the point of picking an alignment for further analysis. There's been a number of discussions and meetings over the years that have looked at these things. Certainly, the delegation from Tulare County have given good points on why we believe it's important to be in the eastern portion. And in fact, several years ago, we were promoting the UP alignment, but for technical reasons that was not applicable. We do believe, as the Economic Development Organization in the region, we believe that agriculture is important. It's an important part of our economy. It's an important part of our community. We need to recognize, however, that this transportation alternative is going to come through the valley at some place, at some point, and will have some impact on agriculture. We've recognized that from day one. We've also recognized the benefits that this helps us in our region to address the chronic unemployment that we've had for decades, the high poverty levels that we've had, and our ability to create jobs in our region by providing a affordable and accessible transportation system for our residents and our business. We continue to support an eastern alignment and a station to serve our region. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. That brings us to the end of this public comment on this item. Any member of the board have any further questions of staff on this, or is there a motion? Mr. Katz moves the staff's recommendation, second by Ms. Flores. Very good.
I want to ask staff a question.
Mr. Kopp.
The acreage, the 650, I think it is, 630 on C1, right? You sure of that?
Go ahead. You measured it.
Yeah, we measured that based on the right-of-way that we would have to take for the high-speed train. Now, certainly, we haven't gone through and said just a little parcel here may not be usable, a little parcel there may not be usable, but we've looked at it as conservatively as we could, and just representing the part from, it's not 630 acres for the whole state, it was just that area around Hanford.
In Kings County.
There's another figure on acreage in the letter we've just been delivered, which I'm sure you'll read carefully, that refers to 2,350 acres of farmland out of production. Whether that means taken by eminent domain isn't clear to me. Between Sacramento to Bakersfield and along the 152 corridor. I know you haven't read the letter. Do you have any reaction as to the accuracy of that?
No, we haven't. We haven't in the Sacramento to Merced section. We're just at scoping. So no, and we haven't got cumulative totals for that whole area, and I think that's what they're looking at. And the width of the right-of-way, I know some people think that the width is going to be a lot wider than it is, and think that access roads are coming in, and so there's more communication information we need to communicate.
Good. I'll second the motion.
Very good. Mr. Katz moves, Ms. Flores seconds. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Without objection, that motion passes. Without objection, we'll move to item number 9. Again, a preliminary alternative analysis report. Yes, Mr. Dearda.
Mr. Chairman, could we, for the sake of the folks that are here from the farming communities, let them know what alternatives there are now? What will happen now in terms of they've invited our chief executive officer to come and meet with them. We may want to increase his insurance. What's the next step?
We'll certainly set up a meeting and work with Ruloff on his calendar, but we'll continue to meet with the farm bureaus and the farming interests in the area and try to reduce impacts. We've got a lot of support of a lot of farmers that have traveled on high-speed rail, and I know there's fears about the pollination. I know there's fears about pesticide spraying and how close they can get to high-speed rail, and so there's a lot of information that we still need to convey to them, and it sounds like there's a lot of information they'd like us to be more aware of.
And maybe if I can just add, my last visit, we did meet with a lot of farmers and farming communities. There were maybe more the ones in the north, so north of Fresno, but we did meet with quite a lot of them already, but it's quite clear we have to have some more meetings, and whenever the time allows, I will be back. I will come and discuss it with the people again, and definitely with the ag community. I think many of you heard, we also have a farm, so I'm in the farming business too, so I'm also a farmer. And I feel for the farmers too, but we will be there to discuss it with them as well.
Could we also, by whatever technique is eminently tactful, begin discussions with the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters in terms of mitigation for the open space loss? Otherwise, we may have that dilemma presented to us in a less tactful way.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Dearden. And on to item number 9.
This is a preliminary alternatives analysis for Bakersfield to Palmdale. So we came before you a couple of months ago, and on the Bob Shavitz from URS is going to be doing the presentation. I forgot to remind you on the last presentation that all the decisions are subject to EPA and Army Corps approval of our 404B1 alternatives analysis.
Thank you, Carrie. Chair Pringle, members of the board, I'm Bob Shavitz, the project manager for the regional consulting team between Fresno and Palmdale. And today I'm here to talk to you about the section from Bakersfield to Palmdale. And I will talk quickly to make sure that we still have 5 of you left before I finish, so I hope to go through this quite quickly. We were in front of you back in July and presented a preliminary or initial alternatives analysis. We ran through a lot of different alternatives. I'll try very hard not to repeat a lot of information, but simply to touch highlights so you can be fully informed on what's at stake. Bakersfield to Palmdale is a mostly rural area. It's 77 miles long. We've developed 3 subsections. One we call Edison, for the small town of Edison, just east of Bakersfield. One that we call Tehachapi, which goes across the Tehachapi Mountains and has a small section in the high desert near Mojave. And then finally the Antelope Valley, which is a section right south from Mojave into Lancaster and Palmdale, following Highway 14 and also the Union Pacific Railroad. Public outreach activities in this section of the project, we list here for your information, both scoping meetings and public information meetings, a number of technical working group and stakeholder meetings, agricultural and water district meetings. We've generally found very, very good cooperation. Everyone's interested in the project. People have concerns. We've been able to talk to them, and we believe that most of the concerns have been addressed, and we'll keep talking with them as we move forward. In addition, media outreach, outreach to the freight railroads, because we do travel fairly close to the Union Pacific Railroad through much of this corridor, and so we're, again, trying to keep our hands out to everyone who would have an interest. So starting with the Edison subsection, 11 miles beginning on the west at Oswell Street. This is just 2 miles east of the proposed Bakersfield station. It's generally a flat environment with mostly agriculture and light industrial uses. Working first, we have four alignment alternatives. One that we call E2 would be on the north side of the Highway 14 freeway. We have 2 variations, one that would be all elevated and one that is partially at grade to try to reduce costs. Then we have an alignment option that would go down the median of Highway 58 before starting to climb above the Caliente Creek on the southeast side into the mountains. And then last but certainly not least, we have an alignment following the old Highway 58, Edison Highway, and this is also near but on the opposite side of the highway from the Union Pacific Railroad. So these are the 4 alternatives that were presented to you back in July. To show just a quick detail, this is the town of Edison to show you how the first the E4, the Edison Highway alignment, would have to deviate slightly through the town. We've had discussions with stakeholders in the town. We've talked with agricultural processors. We've talked with the school. Everyone, of course, is concerned that they not be adversely affected, but we've actually had a very good dialogue with them, and we believe there is a solution to satisfy people's concerns. You also see the alignments on the north side of the 58 freeway and then the alignment that goes down the median of the 58 freeway. Moving forward, we are recommending, staff is recommending that we withdraw the median 58 alignment. It would add considerable cost without any associated environmental benefit. Actually, this alignment would have more impact on ag land because of the curvature of the freeway would require us to realign somewhere between 2 and 3 miles of it, having ag impacts. So the recommendation here is to remove it. This will leave then the other 3 alignments for study, 2 of them variations along the north side of the freeway, and then the one along Edison Highway. So that's where we propose to move forward. Moving on now to the Tehachapi subsection. This area is radically different than any other part of the project between Fresno and Palmdale. It's heavily mountainous, and most of the issues in this subsection are engineering-based. Not so much land use or environmental or conflict-based. I'd ask you to recall that we discussed that the alignments were developed using this quantum computer program that allows thousands or millions of alignments to be compared. The quantum system developed alignments along the blue area you see, which is the Highway 58 corridor and the Union Pacific corridor. But it also found alignments in other corridors, but these were considerably more expensive, would add more travel time, and so we moved to proceed only with the Highway 58. Now, in the Highway 58 corridor, we have 4 alignment options. In terms of the horizontal alignment, they're almost identical, but what they do is test 2 different standards for how steep the climb can be out of Bakersfield, and also whether a phase brake is a technical word for the electric system that drives the train. There needs to be a brake between 2 sections of that system, and it generally is helpful to have that brake be on a flat environment. So again, we have the first alignment, which we call the quantum alignment that we developed. We then created a modified quantum alignment, which reduced the extreme grades, but it resulted in a longer continuous grade. We then, for those 2 alternatives, created a 3rd and 4th alignment involving this phase brake where we place a flat area in the track. Now, this is easiest to see in the next slide. Let me hit it again. There we go. You can see the profile. You can see where it passes through the ground, those would be tunnels, and where it passes above open areas, those would be large bridges. So again, you can see the original alignment is in red. It has some steeper sections. The yellow alignment is modified to reduce the overall steepness, and then the other 2 alignments have the phase brake in the area where you see the flat part of it. The result of this is impacts that vary in terms of where the tunnels are and the bridges, and they also vary in terms of cost. But other than that, there's very little variation between them. This is an example of how a high bridge would look in a mountainous area. This bridge is over 300 feet high at its highest point, and 2 of our alignments would actually have a bridge of this height. Now, what you don't see is off to the left, it would go into a tunnel immediately from the bridge, and coming out the other side, it might indeed appear something like this. These examples are taken from Spain and Korea, but this is very much how it would look in our project here in the Tehachapi Mountains. There are also, I understand, some video simulations that were done on the Authority website and also on YouTube, so you can actually see how it would look as the structure disappeared into a tunnel and then came out the other side. This is a detail of the east side. Once we come out of the mountains, what we're testing here are 2 different alignments. One of them is wide sloping curves to come down. The other one is straight, but it has somewhat of a steeper grade, and we propose to continue looking at both of those options. So at this point in time, we're recommending that we continue with all 4 alignments as we need to do more engineering. As I said, they all have very similar types of impacts and issues. Mostly it has to do with the engineering and the cost, and so we would be working to develop those issues more in detail and then come back to you and possibly ask that some of them be removed. Moving now to the Antelope Valley subsection, to about 25 miles from the town of Mojave down to Lancaster and Palmdale. Our section goes all the way to the Palmdale station. However, the team responsible for the Palmdale to Los Angeles section is in the process of locating the stations. And so we've stopped our work just a bit north of there until they come up with final station locations. And so we stop at Avenue M, which is the boundary between Lancaster and Palmdale. Moving on, we considered back in July 5 alignment options. These are very hard to see at this level. They're all very, very similar, but I can say quickly the AV2 crosses the Union Pacific and moves down the east side until Avenue M when it crosses back. The two AV3 alignments are between the Union Pacific tracks and Sierra Highway, the old Highway 14. There's an AV4 alignment that is within Sierra Highway, and then finally an AV4 option, which is pretty much on the west side of the highway and has lower right-of-way impacts on certain sensitive areas. Now, let me just scroll right through these. This is a detail of the downtown Lancaster area where you can see the alignments. The cross-hatched area is the Union Pacific right-of-way. So we have the yellow is the AV4 option in this area. The red is the main AV4, and then you can see in the blue is the AV3, and 2 is the AV2 over there on the east side. North is to your left. So in evaluating these alignment options, I must have gone backwards. There we go. We are proposing to withdraw 3 of the 5 alignments. The mixed at-grade and elevated on the east side of the Union Pacific has issues with cost and constructability because it would require crossing the Union Pacific corridor twice. This alternative is also not supported by the City of Lancaster. They have concerns about land uses that they're planning on the east, and they would just as soon prefer that we stay away. The AV3 option at grade we looked at an at grade solution as a possible way to save cost. Again, the City of Lancaster has made a compelling case that this would affect more than 10 or 12 cross arterials where they'd have to be grade separated, and this would have tremendous impacts on their downtown area, and it conflicts with their long-range and their short-range plans for development. And then finally, the AV4 is a feasible alignment. However, we then came up with the AV4 option that we believe has just as many benefits, but has some additional benefits in staying out of right-of-way of some sensitive local employers that are rail-related, and we think it's actually a better shot overall. So then we recommend, therefore, to carry forward the AV3 elevated, which is between the railroad and Sierra Highway, and the AV4 option, which is within or west of Sierra Highway. And then I'll show you a blow-up here of the detail. There. This is just south of Lancaster. This is Avenue J. It's about 2 miles south of where the other photo was. So you can see the yellow alignment on the west, and then the blue alignment in the middle are the ones that we propose to take forward. We believe these alternatives fully cover the range of possible situations, and they'll allow our engineers to really find the optimum solution as we go forward. So then to summarize, in the Edison subsection, we recommend carrying forward E2 on the north side of 58, both partially elevated and totally elevated, and E4 along Sierra Highway, but that we not carry forward E3, which is in the 58 median. For Tehachapi, we now recommend for the present to continue to study all 4, but we will do additional engineering and probably come back to eliminate at least 1 and possibly 2 of those alignments. And then we will, of course, bring you back a supplemental AA in that situation. Finally, in the Antelope Valley, carry forward the one that's between the Union Pacific and Sierra Highway, as well as the one that's on the west side of the highway, mostly elevated with relatively limited impacts. But we do not carry forward the one on the east side for cost and impact, or the one at grade because of impacts, or the fourth AV4 because it simply doesn't, it's good, but we have better. And so that's really a reason not to carry it forward. Our next step will be for you all to consider and act on recommendations. We will continue to meet with our stakeholders and the public, and as I said, we've had excellent conversations with everyone from Palmdale all the way up through Tehachapi and into Edison. We will prepare supplemental AA reports as they're called upon. We are beginning our environmental studies this fiscal year, and the biologists will be out in the field next winter and spring doing their surveys. And we look to have a draft EIR/EIS in July of 2012 and a final out in March of 2013. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions at this time? Seeing none, we have staff recommendations before us. I should note the presence of Vice Chairman Umberg, who had, with his employment, he had a case for a court in Sacramento, and he shared with me it was much easier for him to participate when he was in Afghanistan. That he didn't miss those meetings, and he was sorry that he is delayed in being here today. So we have staff recommendations before us. Is there a motion? A motion by Mr. Kopp, seconded by Mr. Katz, or Ms. Flores has to have the second. Very good. Would the clerk please call the roll? Aye.
Aye.
Umberg. Aye.
Yes, you may not have seen him as much. So yes, this is Lisa. This is Mr. Umberg. That does bring us to the end of our agenda, even though we don't have listed on our agenda today a CEO report or comments from board members. But Mr. Van Ark, would you like to share a few comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to just give a brief update on a few day-to-day issues. There were 58 meetings this month held, outreach meetings, policy working groups, and technical working groups, a little less than the month before. Being August, it's a vacation month, so the availability of people is reduced during that period of time as well. Visit to the Central Valley by myself, I think you've heard about it, but obviously there's a huge demand to go all over along this 800-mile line, and I will do my utmost to continue traveling and meeting people around the state. There is one issue. The Inspector General will be doing a review, it's not an audit, of our processes related to the AHSRA funding, so that they will just, we've had a kick-off meeting, and they will be there as of next week, and just to make sure that the way that we would be processing and doing the AHSRA funding application and flow and so on would be correctly done. So this is the group that looks after the AHSRA funding for the state, and we have had first meetings with them. With respect to a very important issue, and we did not hear much from them today, but last board meeting we did, and that is the DBE, or the various minority groups. The board had instructed ourselves to staff to look into this matter. I can report to the board we are doing that. It is not as easy. We are committed to do it, and we will be back to the board, if not in 1 month, definitely in 2. We obviously have to harmonize our activities with those of the FRA, because the FRA will definitely be one of our big funding agencies for this particular project. But it is definitely our intent to incorporate DBE, and we will come with some policies as we move forward. Then we had a very important meeting with the State Parks Executive Director and staff. And I must say also there we've had some real good movement to try and find resolution on some open matters. These were mainly related to Southern California, but obviously we work with the state parks all over the place, but in particular the Southern California issues were well addressed. They are not completely resolved, but we are working on them well together. On the hiring plan, I can confirm that we are now working closely on the shortlisting and possibly the final interviews of the regional director for Southern California. On the other hand, we do not have budget, as most of you know, so it is becoming a little tricky to hire people without a budget, but we will have to overcome that as we move forward. It's a matter of the timing.
Right, and find those that are really committed.
And find those really, really committed. So if any are in the audience, you know what we're talking about. We continue the interface meetings and discussions and technical exchanges with UP and BNSF. Again, I must say we have passed a lot of design drawings and information on to UP. They are analyzing this, so the meetings have been constructive, and we are looking forward to having a next round of meetings with UP to ensure that we are all working according to the same criteria. I would once again like to bring up the lack of budget. I just want the board to be aware that it is more or less now that the money for our consultants has run out, and that means the consultants are now working at their own risk. We appreciate that very much. It was mentioned once yesterday, 2 smaller consultants. So those sub-consultants have indicated that they could not continue without funding, but the bigger consultants have said that they would ensure that this would not affect the projects as we move forward. But obviously this is a statement that's effective today, and it depends on how long the budget will not be approved as to how long these people will be able to hold their positions. The 6-month, this is an important thing, I think, Mr. Chairman, the 6-month response to the audit report is due on the 28th of October. So either you could allocate one of the subcommittees or the committees to work with us, or that we report to on this close or around the next board meeting. But I think normally you would give this to one of the subcommittees to look into with us. So
Well,
the
I believe
report can be given in
on
a
that
6-month response.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Van Ark. We do have an audit committee that is charged with this responsibility. Mr. Dearden and I have operated in that capacity. Therefore, it would be appropriate for this item to come before that committee, or if we need to hold a hearing of that committee, we should coordinate that appropriately.
So we'll do it through the audit committee.
Yes.
Thank you. And then next week, I will be going together with the governor to Asia for about an 8-day trip to Asia to promote the high-speed rail. And I must say the governor is very supportive of high-speed rail, even though they are his last days. Also, with respect to the budget, you know that the board had requested us to write a letter to the governor and the legislature, which we did do. The governor did respond to us, gave, again, full support for the high-speed rail project, in particular also relating, of course, to job creation. But with respect to the budget, obviously we cannot resolve the budget issues. There are many other people working on that at the moment. With respect to the station area development guidelines, it's already been mentioned today. It was decided to extend those for 1 month. We have had quite a lot of interest. We had a lot of cities coming back to us, but many of them also asked for a bit more time. So for those of you that are here, please work on it this month. We'd love to have those inputs from you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Van Ark. I would like to briefly, make everyone aware of ULI, Urban Land Institute, TOD, Transit-Oriented Development, so the ULI, TOD, HSR, High-Speed Rail, is having all the ULI chapters in the state are coordinating a TOD conference in Anaheim at the Anaheim Convention Center on September 23rd at 9 a.m. So members of this board or other interested parties can coordinate their interest through the ULI chapter nearest them. Any other member of the board have any comments or would like to report on anything? Mr. Dearden.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also note that our Chief Executive Officer is going to be the featured speaker at a joint meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the San Jose Rotary Club, the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and a couple of other sponsoring organizations at a rather large gathering, which will be recorded and presented on 230 radio stations across the nation, as well as C-SPAN, as well as other media, and it'll be an opportunity for California to make a national statement. And that'll be on September the 29th in San Jose. And if any of you would like to attend, you'd be my guest.
Thank you very much. Any other board member comment? Seeing none, I would have been told by our legal counsel that the 2 items or 3 items that are on for potential closed session discussion do not require that. Therefore, if there's no objection, we'll stand in adjournment till our next meeting in October.